So every year there was a blues festival, and I was helping he was actually the front of house engineer set up for this blues festival, and then he fell ill during the setup, right? And he was like, "I'm gonna have to go on. Do you think you can do this?" And I was like, "I'm gonna say yes, whether I think I can do it or not," right? And that was kind of like my baptism of fire. Then all of a sudden, I was there mixing bands, and it was like that was the push I needed. And then they started hiring me from that base. Then I went on tour with a punk band called The Damned.
Huh?
When I was 17, I went on tour with monitors for The Damned, and then from then it kind of snowballed. And then I left that little PA company I was working for and started working with different bands, and now I've become a production manager for the last 3 years who still mixes monitors.
Well, hello, and thanks for joining me for another episode of Geezers of Gear. And so today I want to talk to you for a minute about a couple of big shows, trade shows, not concert shows, but trade shows. First, NAMM. If you saw one of my most recent episodes, you saw that I had the president of NAMM on, and we talked a lot about what they were going to do. And now I've heard a lot about what they have done. So I didn't go to the show this year. I spent a lot of years going to NAMM, as you may have heard. But I didn't go this year. And from what I've heard, it's continuing to become a really great show for audio, but still not crushing on lighting. And of course, part of that is because of the lighting companies. There's probably a lot of companies who are like, you know what, not another trade show, sorry, because these lighting booths are very expensive. And, maybe the margins aren't quite the same as audio, or they're not as large companies as audio or whatever, but it's tough to go in and do these $1 million trade show booths. And so I completely understand. I'm not bagging on any of the lighting companies, believe me. But, I know NAMM for many years because I was part of it back then. They've tried to attract lighting companies, and there's sort of a little surge, and they'll come and then they'll go away again. So, but yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about the show from an educational standpoint. I've heard NAMM did an amazing job this year. A lot of really cool events, a lot of bands, concerts, shows. So congrats to NAMM on that. And of course, this week, if you are under a rock and maybe haven't heard about it, there's a show in Barcelona called ISE, which stands for Integrated Systems Europe. And it's funny because I was actually talking with someone about this yesterday. Technically, it's an integration show. It's in the name, integration or Integrated Systems Europe. And so it's a lot like maybe a European Infocom, you could say. And probably people in Europe are going to correct me and say, it's nothing like Infocom, but it really is. And in recent years, though, it's really taken over for rental and production too. And, again, all the lighting manufacturers, sound manufacturers, video, all the big companies are there exhibiting. And a lot of companies, a lot of rental companies from around Europe and even from the US and other parts of the world as well are also going to this show. So I think that maybe some of the reason that it's taken over so much is because ProLight is no longer a show. The Frankfurt show is gone. People have told me, no, that's not the case. It's a different show. But I think that that's what happened. And I also think that manufacturers and attendees love Barcelona. It's a great city to have to go to, especially at this time of year. And just a fabulous place, beautiful country, of course, wonderful people. So going to Barcelona in January, when the rest of the world is cold and miserable, is probably a pretty good idea. And so, I've heard the show is massive every year. It seems to be growing by leaps and bounds. And so that's a good thing. So around the ISE show, I looked for some press releases that are out there and some new equipment coming out. I would love to be at ISE, but unfortunately I have to work. And so ETC has announced that they've acquired Pharos. And this one was interesting. ETC, of course, being one of our sponsors. We love them. But I thought they already owned Pharos for some reason. I thought it was an ETC brand that was wholly owned by ETC, but I guess it was a partnership or distribution deal of some sort that's been going on, I think, 20 plus years. And I've used Pharos in a lot of installations in the past when I had an LED company. And so I really love to see the stuff that ETC is doing, whether or not they're a sponsor. I love what they're doing. I love that they're really pushing this brand forward. Not that they were, a sleepy brand or anything, but they were really known as a theatrical brand. And now they really are expanding. They're much bigger in both architectural and rock and roll entertainment lighting too. So congrats to ETC, congrats to Pharos. Obviously a very good match. And also in acquisition news, Audiotonics announced that they are buying 3 companies, not just one. They have to upstage ETC and announce 3 acquisitions at the same time. And so they are buying DPA microphones, or have already bought. I don't know what stage the transaction is in, but DPA is a great brand, of course, really good microphones. WizzyCom, I don't know much about. I assume it's a comm system, but again, I haven't been paying attention to what WizzyCom is or what they're doing, and Austrian Audio. So congratulations to Audiotonics, and of course to the other brands involved. If you don't know who Audiotonics is, they're the brand that is behind and owns Digico and Allen and Heath and many other brands as well. So very large audio company run by a really great CEO, and just a nice company. So congrats to everyone. In other ISE news, some of the releases that I've seen or videos or whatever, I did see the Joseph Valchar video from Robe, who is announcing the Robe Gigapoint. And so obviously there is a trend that is continuing on creating lights that are able to project shows on Earth from the moon or something. They need to keep getting brighter and brighter. And, I don't know how many lumens we're going to get to at some point, but this one apparently is pretty bright. Of course, the Megapoint, wildly successful light for the last 10 years or however long it's been out. Still on the used market. We sell them like crazy. Megapoint, hugely successful light, and the Gigapoint, or Gigapointy, as I guess Roby liked to pronounce it, will probably also be successful. No idea what the price is. I'm sure it's not cheap. Mac 1 from Martin, of course, a wildly successful fixture. And if you've been listening to my podcast, you know that it's one of my little personal favorites. I've always loved the Mac 1 since the moment I saw it released. I love the packaging. I love the size, the weight, the price, of course, hits a perfect price point. And they've sold somewhere in the neighborhood of a bazillion of them. So they've sold a lot of Mac 1s, and now they have the Mac 1 Beam. And again, stupid me, I thought the Mac 1 was a Beam. So I guess not. I guess this one is officially a Beam. The Mac 1 was sort of a Beam. But congratulations to Martin on that. I'm sure it will do very well. Beams are very popular, and the Mac 1 is very popular. Sounds like a match made in heaven. D&B has a bunch of new releases, which I'm not going to go through, but one of them, the U series, is networked and self-powered speaker line that is apparently both for installation, which I thought that was what it was targeting when they say that it's networked, but apparently also for live and for club installs and stuff like that. So we'll see. The big keep getting bigger, D&B and L-Acoustic, of course. And so I'm sure they'll do very well with it. Another trend that I've seen, not only this year, but for the past several years, is this immersive audio trend. And we're going to see a lot more immersive audio projects being announced and products being announced for those projects as well, of course. But Rankis Hines, Nexo, and others are all launching new immersive audio products. And they're also using these immersive audio sort of environments to show those products as well. So I kind of wish I was there to see that or hear that. I think it's probably pretty cool. Check it out. Our friends at Elation or ADJ Group, Obsidian has a new full-size console, I guess, called the NX3. I don't know much about it, and I'm not a console guy. I'm not a operator or programmer or anyone who knows to talk very smartly about that stuff. So you can look it up, the Obsidian NX3. I can tell you the pictures look really cool. It's got lots of cool features. I think it's 64 universes. So it's a pretty powerful little console, and I'm sure they'll do very well with it. I've seen a lot more noise coming from Obsidian, and that's great because they're obviously great people. It's a nice product. I know they've done very well in television, and it's sort of doing really well in that sort of mid range of console stuff where it competes probably with Camsys and maybe even some of the Hog stuff. So congratulations to them on that launch. Speaking of Elation, they have a bunch of other new releases, including new stuff from Soul, Range, Fuse Range, Rebel, and Paragon, where they are showing the long throw Paragon LT. Again, another, shoot from space light. And so that's cool. And also the Heliotrack, which is I guess, LiDAR tracking system. Another one jumping into that arena. Let's face it, follow spots are not going to be around much longer, so they got to be replaced with something. And there are a few really great options out there. And now Elation has one. I'm sure it's priced really well. And I haven't heard yet how well it works, so I can't really honestly tell you anything. But Elation's a great company. I'm sure they'll make it work. And congrats on that stuff. A lot more new releases. I could talk all day about it, but I won't. And one other one that I wanted to mention, the honorable or dishonorable mention, I don't know, but Christie Video has launched a new series of projectors called Chorus. And I saw the photo, and it just looks like somebody went and raided the Comar factory and found some old NAT parts. It looks like a Comar NAT. It's got a periscope sort of lens at the front of it, which is actually kind of an interesting idea for a projector that you can kind of mount in any position and then aim it in any direction, so the lens doesn't have to point forward. Neat idea, but it's funny. I mentioned it to Fausto, formerly of Comar, who designed and built the NAT along with Bruno Dodoro. And Fausto said, I can tell them all of the reasons why it's not going to work very well. And so a very funny comment from a guy who had every possible plausible problem you could imagine from the NAT. And I guess mostly around the fact when you start adding a bunch of lenses that are sort of, this direction, aiming to hit this one, going to this one, and then out the front, you cut your output tremendously. And you also open a lot more surfaces up to whether it's dirt or dust or fog fluid or any kind of stuff. So we'll see. Christie are a smart company. They're a very big company. I'm sure they'll get it right. And it's a neat idea on the surface. And so today on the podcast, we are joined by Aaron Buck. Aaron is a touring professional with over 20 years of experience working with artists like Anastacia, Shakira, Status Quo, Cat Stevens, and Calvin Harris. He started as a monitor engineer and now is the production manager for OMD, who I know as Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, where he's been part of the team since 2017. Aaron is a trained L-Acoustic K1 tech, D&B system specialist, and a strong advocate for mental health in the touring industry. Originally from the north of England and now based in Bonn, Germany, he's all about staying calm under pressure. Maybe he can tell me how to do that. Finding balance on the road and saying yes to life. Let's welcome Aaron Buck. So we're talking about diet here, and like two crazy freaking rock and roll people talking about diet and exercise,
right? And pescatarianism.
I was telling Aaron that I had been a pescatarian for a while. Well, I was a vegetarian for a little while because someone I knew died from cancer, colon cancer, and I just sort of went over the edge the other direction. And so I was a vegetarian, and then I got bored and became a pescatarian, and then I kind of inched my way back into chicken, and now I eat steaks. So not very often, but I do. But no. What were you saying about pescatarians?
I was going to say, I thought there was like a punchline-y thing coming when you said, then I went pescatarian. I thought you were going to say, and I got mercury poisoning. Because I recently heard of, and I know this person, somebody who works in our industry who is a a rep, for a very large global corporation, let's say.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and their job is to basically, go and treat the clients and go
Take
and
people
treat
out
the
to dinner.
reps. Sure. And this particular
It's a tough
company,
gig. I did it.
it's
I did
always
it.
sushi. Everyone's going to know exactly who I'm talking about now, but it's always sushi that they bring in or take you to a restaurant. And this person was in a hospital for quite some time with mercury poisoning from eating too
Wow.
much sushi.
Wow.
And
I
mercury
don't know
poisoning
who,
is like a crazy thing to try and get rid of, and it makes you kind of lose your marbles from
yeah. I
what
mean,
I've heard.
you're an audio guy, and so I don't know exactly who you're talking about, but here in the US, Christy Lights, there's a guy named Chris McNean
Ah, uh-huh,
who, just go look at his Instagram or Facebook. Like every single day he's eating, and he doesn't eat cheap sushi either. He eats the good stuff,
yeah.
so he's going for omakase and, all that stuff. He's eating really, really good sushi. And I'm always jealous looking at his page. But I asked him that one day, I said, how the hell do you not have some sort of a problem with either, just
Heavy
bacteria
metals.
or
Yeah,
heavy metals? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But it's mostly the big fish. It's tuna, and like
Apparently,
salmon
it's
is
the
usually
older
okay.
fish, right? Fish that live a lot longer in years or in
Right.
time.
Right.
Because I
Yeah.
read about it because of feeding fish to my dogs. I have 2 dogs.
Oh, right.
We're
Yeah. I
getting
never
really
thought of
rock and
that.
roll here, aren't we? Talking about dog food, and
Mm.
I read that if they eat any fish that's over 2 years old, like a saltwater fish, then there is a risk of them coming down with
Interesting.
mercury poisoning. So it's like something is absorbed when they're in the sea that gets turned into mercury.
I was told, and I'm probably wrong,
No, I
and
could be wrong, but it's
if
what I
our
read.
producer was here, she could look it up on Grok or ChatGPT or something. But I was
Yeah.
told that it was the bigger fish
Mm,
because it comes from the smaller fish and the little bait fish and stuff that they're eating. And I don't know. I don't remember the exact thing, but
yeah.
it's a real thing. I try not to eat too much tuna
Yeah.
because of that, and I'm okay with eating not too much tuna because salmon's better for you. But I'll tell you the problem that I've seen over here in the US, and I don't know if it's the same in Germany where you live, but
Mm.
you can't get frickin' salmon. Like you can get farm raised
Oh
salmon, which
yeah,
is
you can only get
garbage.
farm salmon, yeah. And then they'll still sell farm salmon, but they'll call it line caught, but it's still
Yeah.
farm salmon. It's just somebody's caught it
Yeah.
with a line.
Line
You know?
caught in a little plastic swimming
Right.
pool,
Yeah.
yeah, where they swim in each other's feces and stuff,
Yeah,
it's
and they
just,
only get fed one particular pellet, so their meat just tastes like that pellet. That's it. Yeah.
well, there's a particular longevity doctor I follow who says, eat what you want, cheat when you want, all of those things. No matter what, do not eat farm raised salmon.
Really, that bad, huh?
Don't eat farmed salmon.
Wow.
It was like on his shit list. Like, do not eat this no matter what.
Jeez.
And it's hard because like you literally have to sign up for a subscription over here to a company that ships you,
Mm.
fresh salmon.
I bet it's super
So
expensive as well, right?
it is more expensive. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, it's not like 5 times as much or anything, but it's probably 50% more than farmed salmon.
Yeah.
But I mean, salmon's so good for you. So,
I like
anyways,
salmon
yeah.
too. It's great.
Yeah, well, I didn't used to like it. Like I called it welfare fish, which is stupid because it's one
Yeah.
of the more expensive fishes now. But
Well, I know what you mean. It is kind of like a beginner's step to fish.
it
It's like,
kind of is.
do you guys have fish fingers over there? Like the
We
fish?
do, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
I think when you're getting into fish as a kid, it probably goes fish fingers and then salmon, right?
yeah, yeah.
Maybe
Like
that's
haddock.
yeah,
Yeah,
or maybe
yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
But it somehow salmon got a reprieve and it's rised above everything, and it's now this fancy fish, and it's
yeah.
really expensive. It's not as expensive as like cod or not cod, but what's the one I'm thinking of? Sea bass and stuff
Mm.
like that. But it's quite expensive. So, anyways, yeah, this is quite a rock and roll podcast we're on right now.
Yeah.
So,
It is.
Mainlight, the partner you trust with the gear you want. Your go-to dry hire rental provider, bringing you the latest in lighting and stage equipment, from moving lights and control consoles to truss motors and rigging. They can provide the tools you need to build your show from the ground up. Whether that means quiet profiles and ellipsoidals for a theater, powerful all-weather movers that can punch through a stadium setting, or fixtures with rock-solid color consistency for TV and film, Mainlight has everything you need to make your production shine. And it's not just rentals. Mainlight also offer new equipment sales from all your favorite brands, along with used lighting pulled directly from their rental inventory. Every piece of used equipment is meticulously maintained and tested so you can buy with confidence. With facilities in New Jersey, Delaware, and Las Vegas, you get the reach of a national company with the personalized service of a local provider. To get started, email contact@mainlight.com or call them directly at 800-397-6246. Welcome, Aaron. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining
Thanks
me,
for having me.
appreciate. I think we were actually scheduled a couple years ago or something, weren't we?
Oh, it
And
was a
then,
while ago, yeah. And then
yeah,
I
you got
wasn't
busy or
feeling
something.
great that day, and then
That's what it was.
yeah, and it kind of just then Sarah just didn't ask me again. Sarah, who's brought
Oh,
me on.
damn,
So
Sarah.
yeah, and then I think the start of this year she went through the trash or whatever and found me again, and then
Yeah.
here I am. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad she found you again because, it's funny because OMD, like I
Mm,
forget when I hear OMD that it was orchestral maneuvers in the dark, the stuff that I heard in like after hours clubs when the rock and roll bar closed in
yeah.
Canada when I was, in my late teens or early 20s. And I didn't listen to that kind of music. I had long hair and I was a rock and roll guy, but you go chasing girls into an after hours club or something and you're like, what's this, weird head boppy stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
and OMD was big in that circle. So
It's funny, the OMD thing. We tour stateside quite a lot, and definitely a different vibe over there. It does have more like this trendy underground vibe. Here,
really,
it's like how I view it here is just like straight down the line pop, right? It's
yeah,
just straight down the
mainstream.
line cheesy 80s pop for me.
Yeah,
But you go over there, and then they're all about, it's played in like underground. It still is in these like
yeah,
kind of half semi-gothic vibe. These kind of clubs, they still play
really,
the early Sing Electricity and stuff like that, and they go mad for it. Yeah, and we do some big shows in America, which is
yeah.
impressive for a band from the UK. Who,
Well, I think a lot of it is guys my age or women my age who sort of grew up on it and remember their first
hmm
shag in the back of a car or their first dance
sure,
somewhere or their first whatever. And it was Duran Duran playing in the background or OMD playing in the background or whatever.
yeah,
And and now they have money and they can travel around and go see the bands they love and stuff. So it's nostalgia, I think, a little bit. But you're saying there's like a younger underground
yeah,
scene,
definitely. It's bizarre. The
huh?
demographic over there is like there are that older crowd, but also the song that they did that was on the soundtrack to a movie called Pretty in Pink.
Right.
Um, that song is called "If You Leave" is still played apparently at every high school prom. For
Yeah.
some reason, it's just like the high
W-
school prom song. So I guess couples, even who maybe went to the high school prom 5 years ago, if they're still together, come and see OMD to dance to that song again. Maybe that's what it is.
That's
It,
interesting.
it makes no sense to me, but
So the shows that you do with OMD over here,
mm,
are they younger audiences then, or?
yeah, I would say there's, like I said, there's all ranges. There's the young ones, there's the my age ones, and then there's the original, shall I say? So I'll
Yeah.
put it like that. So there's all
Yeah.
ages. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
One thing I'll tell you about the younger generation right now is that
Mm,
they seem really curious about our music or my music, from my
yeah.
generation, like, the Stones and Pink Floyd and, that kind of stuff. Because I remember going and seeing Pink Floyd. Now, this was a long time ago now. This was probably 20 years ago or something. They
hmm
played in a stadium here in South Florida.
Yeah.
And I was sitting watching the show, and there were these like four young girls and four young guys in front of me. They couldn't have been more than 21 or 22 years old. And they knew like every word to like not just, Brick on the Wall, but like Wish You Were Here and some of the more obscure songs and stuff. They knew every word. And I was like, I like these kids. That's cool.
See, I would put that down to them legalizing pot in most places over there, though, to be
That's
honest.
probably true. Yeah,
Right?
that's probably,
I mean,
or
but
Joe Rogan talking about LSD,
yeah, maybe, yeah, because that is.
Yeah.
I think even when I was still a kid, and when you're 16, 17, 18, you try pot. you do want to put on a Pink Floyd record, don't you? For
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
it was the live album Pulse, and I still listen to that this day. And I don't smoke
yeah,
weed anymore. It's got nothing to do with
yeah,
that. But that's a great album, and I was interested in Pink Floyd too. I think there's a certain caliber of bands that kind of remain, don't they? I guess
yeah,
that's the reason that these bands like AC/DC and Springsteen and all that are still doing stadiums.
yeah,
When
yeah. So true.
will
Yeah,
Taylor
the
Swift still
songs
be
really
doing
last.
stadiums in 30 years? Maybe,
Yeah.
but
I don't know.
yeah.
It's hard to believe, but who knows? Like I've
Mm.
always, for the last 20 years, I've been saying, 20 years from now, what does classic music look like?
Yeah,
And it's really not gonna be, some of the stuff that we're listening to today. Like I think most of the classic music is still gonna be the Stones and Led Zeppelin and the
yeah,
Who and the Beatles and whatever, right? Like it's gonna be the same stuff that we call classic rock.
true.
So,
But will there
yeah,
be another genre? That's the thing. Because all right, was new wave called new wave when the new wave was happening, or was it called
it
just pop?
was.
It was okay.
No, it was, yeah, it was called new wave because it
For
was
an
a special type
examples,
of pop. Yeah,
right?
because
So what? But
there was
what do we
pop and
have
then there was
names
new wave.
for this kind of pop that we have now, or not? I don't keep up on this. I don't because I don't.
Shite.
The hope, yeah,
I
well,
call
yeah.
it
But I don't
shite.
pigeonhole this, but because pop's such a generic term, we used to, as a joke in school, say that once upon a time Beethoven was probably called pop music.
Yeah,
Which, because pop just means popular, But
yeah. The one I struggle with is all the electronic music
mm,
because there's like electronic house and drum and bass and this and that and this and that and all these different names, and I have no idea the difference. I just call it all electronic or
yeah,
EDM music, but I'm totally wrong, but I can't keep up with all those different names. And
but it was the same in like the guitar. I remember when people started listening to emo and then post summer, and there's all these names for the guitar bands, isn't there? Post emo,
yeah,
whatever. I don't know what they call it, but it's strange and it makes sense to some people, I guess. But I've never searched iTunes for a post emo period music thing.
yeah, I don't know what any of that stuff means. Like
No, me
it's
neither.
just, do we need 8 billion different genres of music? Like when you go scrolling down through, I'm on Apple Music, not Spotify for the
Me
most
too.
part. And
Yeah.
I'll go scrolling down through the genres and it's like, what is all this stuff? There
Yeah.
used to be rock, pop, and country, and jazz
Yeah.
and blues, but that was it. There was like 5 genres. Now there's 50.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But I
No.
don't know. I don't know. Like one thing I do love kids though that who like my son is 21 now and he knows all the words to Bohemian Rhapsody. He knows all the words to like all these 70s and 80s songs because that's what he grew up listening to in my
Yeah.
cars or his
Yeah.
mom's car or whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Yes,
he
yeah. I guess we all. Did your parents listen to music when you were a kid? Do you have
yeah,
your
for
parents'
me,
music still in your head?
yeah. So in my house, we had, you wouldn't recognize it because you're younger than me, but everyone had these like pieces of furniture. It was like a console that
Mm.
if you opened the top of it, it had a turntable, an 8-track, and if you were a little fancier, it might have a cassette player in it too. Um, but my mom and my stepdad always had either Elvis
Oh, nice.
or some of the old sort of crossover, like in between country and rock, like Roy Orbison and stuff like that. But it was almost always Elvis, Conway Twitty, some of the old country music and stuff.
Nice.
And it was just nonstop. Like there was
Yeah.
always music in my house. And it's really what inspired me to become a musician so early. I started playing or noodling with guitar when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And then by the time I was 12, I was a singer in a band.
Oh, cool.
And it was really just because that's how I was brought up. I was brought up around music constantly. So,
Yeah, it's very
um,
similar, really, to me. My dad was massively into music. He still is, and he was very into rock. I remember he was Zeppelin, actually Blue Oyster Cult, and
yeah,
Rory Gallagher, also did blues stuff. And
yeah.
I just picked up a guitar when I was young and started playing.
Oh,
Uh,
that's cool.
Boom Boom by John Lee Hooker was the first thing I learned on guitar, actually.
Really
And it still
interesting.
influences what I listen to now. I still love blues. I listen to blues all the time.
Do you?
Um, Yeah, I think it was because it's the first kind of expressive music I ever took in, and kind of first music I ever kind of digested when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
simple, 12-bar shuffle or whatever is a simple kind of groove that a child can understand and get with.
But isn't blues an American thing? Like,
It
so
is,
is
it
that
is.
really common in Great Britain?
Blues is an American thing, yeah. But like all great American things and great, well, like all great American things and all great British things, they came across the
It
pond
blends. Yeah.
and changed slightly, didn't they?
Yeah.
It started off but then Clapton was British, obviously, and Clapton started playing the blues,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then it became Thin Lizzy and everything.
Oh, and Led
It's all
Zeppelin
blues
and
based.
all of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, but it's funny because, I've read a lot about the Beatles and stuff. So, I was sort of too young to really be into the Beatles when they got huge.
that's a shame.
Um, but and a little too young for Elvis too.
Uh,
So I never really was a huge Beatles fan when I was a kid. Like I liked Revolution because it was a little heavier and stuff
yeah.
like that. But I didn't
First
get
time you
into a
heard a
lot of the.
distorted guitar, probably right?
Oh
Was
yeah, it was amazing.
yeah,
But really Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and the heavier stuff really got me when I was young. I loved it all. Thin Lizzy,
uh-huh.
and then of course Kiss in the United States got big, and
Hmm.
so. But yeah, like I don't think I really ever got into blues until later. Probably like in my late teens is when I really had an appreciation for blues, especially when I became a musician and
Hmm.
you know realized that there was something there. But
I grew up in the north of England, and there, right at the time Oasis were becoming huge for the first time, uh,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and
yeah, they're
there
pretty big now.
there was a big kind of turn the clocks back because they kept going on about this band called the Beatles, which obviously everybody had heard about. But every interview you watch from Oasis, even when they were young, arrogant kids, they always talked about the Beatles. Oh, fucking Beatles, great, blah blah. So,
Yeah.
and it made a lot of generation people of my age turn the clocks back and start listening to the Beatles.
Oh yeah.
And I will always be forever grateful for that because and I would start listening to the Beatles because they sounded like Oasis, right?
Yeah.
And I really appreciate bands that do that, that say, hey, yeah, hey guys, hey kids, it's great that you're into us, but listen to this band because this is what we were listening to. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's really important. It doesn't really happen in music anymore, does it? That people go,
Yeah.
hey, oh yeah, I love that you love my music, but my music's inspired by these people
Totally
that came
true.
20 years
Yeah, totally
before.
true. Have you ever heard of Mal Evans?
I don't think so.
So he was the original roadie for the Beatles.
Okay.
And if you want to get a really great book, get this
Yeah.
book. It's called, hang
Let
on
me
one
write this
second, I'll
down.
tell you what it's called. It's a fantastic book. I did it on audiobook, but it's called Living the Beatles Legend, The
Live.
Untold Story of Mal Evans. So he was the original I don't know whether he was called a road manager or assistant or whatever he was, but he was
Hmm.
very close to the Beatles.
Okay.
He, spent every moment with them, ran around and did errands for them, drove them back and forth around the UK for a long time. And he had taken a lot of notes and diaries and stuff like that. And when he died many years later, like just a few years ago,
Hmm.
his family basically decided to package together all of these diaries and sell them to a publisher and get a book created from it. And it's just a friggin' awesome
That
book. It's
sounds
really,
awesome.
really a great book. Really a great book. Just even listening from a roadie standpoint to,
Yeah.
the stuff that they had to do back then just to make shit work.
It's always, I'm actually a member of this, going to all that stuff, the like PA of the day or whatever it's called on Facebook. It's all about old
Yeah.
PA systems. And I started out in an age of analog in the 2000. I started doing audio. So,
Yeah.
and analog was still there. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't the dark age or anything, but analog was still around. I still learned an analog
Yeah.
desk. So anyway, people post pictures of these old concerts, and then somebody posted a picture of the Beatles at Shea Stadium. Right. And there's
Wild.
and there's like 5 speakers,
Yeah,
That's it.
little columns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what?
And you just think, wow, like, you know,
Yeah.
I,
Well, and
was
also
there any
remember,
thought that
people
went
were
into that?
screaming. People were
Exactly, yeah.
screaming at like 120 dB too.
I,
So
I
it's
know.
like
I have
nobody
met
could hear
people who
anything.
saw the Beatles back then and tell
Yeah.
me like, oh, I couldn't hear a thing, you know?
Nothing.
No.
Nothing. You couldn't hear anything. they couldn't hear themselves. I mean, it was just like mayhem, completely ridiculous. You
Yeah,
know, but back then, I mean, nobody played stadiums. So,
no,
why would you have a sound system for stadiums when nobody ever played in one?
they
And there
didn't
were
even
no
have
hockey arenas,
monitoring.
really.
They didn't have monitoring back then, did they? There was a I think it's a Ringo Starr interview that I was watching quite recently. He was saying, "Well, the Beatles never played live much because we couldn't hear ourselves." Literally, that was his.
That is
It
hilarious.
was like it was no fun. All we could hear was everybody else screaming, and we couldn't even hear ourselves playing. That's why we never
Right.
did that many gigs. And
That is
I'm not sure
wild.
that's the exact reason why. They did an
Yeah.
awful lot of recording in the 9 years that they were together. Whether he would have had time to talk, but it was just interesting to hear his take on it.
This episode is brought to you today by ETC Rigging. For 50 years, ETC has made a name for itself in the world of entertainment technology. You can find ETC products in buildings of every size across the entire globe. Broadway shows, rock concerts, sports stadiums, outdoor parks, TV studios, and convention centers, you name it. They have all trusted ETC to make their spaces beautiful and safe. Many of these spaces include rigging systems to keep them running smoothly and safely. Fortunately, ETC Rigging offers a range of hoists and controls to accommodate the unique needs of various production spaces and budgets. ETC's motorized hoists and hoist control systems raise theater technology, including stage curtains, lighting equipment, backdrops, projection screens, and more. And the recent addition of Prodigy Balance, a new counterweight rigging solution for loads up to 1,200 pounds, brings more options to venues looking for safe, user-friendly rigging. If you need backstage rigging that is easy to learn and safe for students and volunteers to use, Prodigy Balance could be the answer. ETC is known for its customer support and 24/7, 365 availability. But now, employees have even more of a personal stake in maintaining that reputation because ETC has become 100% employee owned. Each person building the rigging systems, developing the control software, and answering support calls is actually an owner at ETC. Outstanding support, reliable products, innovative technologies. This is the foundation of excellence ETC has built over the past 50 years, and they plan to deliver more in the next 50. For the latest ETC products and installation news, visit etcconnect.com. But you know what I miss, and I was part of this. Like, I'm old enough to where I was part of this, and when we recorded something or even playing live, when you
Mm.
wanted certain sounds, you had to get real creative.
Mm.
It's like when I was a kid, if I wanted my bike to sound like a motorcycle, I had to go get playing cards and a clothespin,
Oh yeah,
and put them on the spokes, and it would go,
yeah. We used to
make
do
this
it with a
dumb sound.
plastic drinks bottle. We used to cut it in half and shove it between the tire and the
Whoa.
frame.
Luxury.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we didn't have plastic drink bottles. We
No,
had glass
and
ones.
the
So
world was a better place, right?
yeah, that wouldn't have worked out so well. But now, like, you go into a studio and you have electronics to do anything you want. But when you read articles from like Jimmy Page and
Mm.
Pete Townsend and all of these old school, Jimi Hendrix, whoever, the way that they had to come up with their sound, the things they had to do to these amplifiers or to the guitars or to whatever, like, they didn't just have a rack of effects pedals and a rack of digital effects and modeling amplifiers and stuff
Mm.
like that. Like, we're very spoiled today. We can make any sound we want
But
without
we
very
just keep
much
making
effort.
the same ones, it seems like.
It is true, isn't it? Like, a good guitar sound is a good guitar sound, period.
Yeah,
A chord, a guitar, and a friggin' 100-watt Marshall amp, and it sounds
correct.
pretty damn good.
Yeah,
You can't beat it, really.
no.
So, but like you said, I was doing sound back when it was. So that's when I stopped. Like, I never was a
Mm.
sound guy, but I could walk up to a old Soundcraft 24 channel analog console
Yeah,
and make a kick drum sound pretty good, make a snare
sure.
sound pretty good with a gate on it, and
Hmm.
I could make it sound decent, right? But when consoles got bigger, and then when all this digital stuff started happening, I don't even know how to turn a console on anymore, let alone, like there's no big effects rack and, everything's in plugins and stuff. I don't get it. I just don't
Mm.
understand it at all.
No, I don't get. And here's the thing: so I grew up with analog, right? And then all of a sudden, I obviously adopted digital very quickly because I had to. And
Yeah.
I wasn't by this point. I was just like lower league, kind of working for an audio company, and I would always be the guy stood behind the engineer,
Yeah.
And at some point, all these engineers at the time, and I know who you are, and I've never asked you this actually, but why did you change from let's say a Harrison or a Midas to a flipping profile to what's considered today to be a bad sounding digital console, which the first ones
Yeah.
were? Why the hell did you change?
Yeah.
Why
And what
did
do
you
they
do that
say?
to us? I've never asked them. I never had the
Oh,
balls
you
to ask them
haven't
actually.
asked. Oh, I
No,
see.
but
Yeah.
I should.
Yeah.
Because that's a part, and of course it's all down to money, isn't it? It's like the production manager told me we can only have half a truck for front of house, and we used to
That's
have
a
a full
big
truck,
part of it. But it's
But
money all over the place. Like it's the whole sort of
yeah,
economy ecosystem around that show. You got to use this sound company, so it's whatever they've got, right?
sure, yeah,
Or I mean, but it's just so different than it was back then. Like, if you'll believe this. So my very first band, we played with similar columns to what the Beatles used. I remember it was
mm,
a Sun PA system.
okay,
And they were these columns that had I think they had 4 or 5 12-inch speakers
uh,
and maybe a couple of eights and then a horn at the top. And, but they were columns. They were like 6 foot tall columns. And we had those. And then my next band that got much more professional, we had JBL W bins. I don't even know if you know what that
oh, I know
is.
what W bins, yeah,
Yeah. So we had W bins with, I think they had a single 18 in them. I don't
mm-hmm.
remember exactly. And that was cool, and then like some sort of I think my first time having a big PA, we had JBL 4560s for mid-range, which are the worst sounding thing you've ever heard in your life. And then like Altec Lansing horns on top. And then along came Martin with
Mm.
the Philishave.
Oh yeah,
And so then we had these 15-inch Martin bins
uh-huh.
on the bottom, and then the Philishave mids and horns. And that was so cutting edge. And, now with line array and stuff, it's also different.
Yeah, yeah. I grew up with I worked for a small PA company. They had this little point source. They had lots of point source systems, but they were huge and heavy,
Yeah.
right? And I swear I'm only in my very late 30s now, and I've got back problems already, and I swear it's from all that.
Yeah, probably.
All that
Yeah.
stuff, I wasn't even grown yet. I was still 16, and we're stacking
Yeah.
these speaker systems that weighed hundreds of kilos. But I enjoyed it, and I loved it, and I learned a lot from
Yeah.
doing that. And that, I'm
Well, come
glad.
to think of it, so not only, did we load our own gear because we had one roadie who did sound and lights.
Yeah.
So we had to carry stuff into the venue and stuff. But in our bus, so we traveled, one of my bands, we traveled in a converted school bus where the front half was sort of passenger seats and
Okay.
the back half was all of our gear.
Mm.
And because I was usually last to claim a row of seats to sleep on, I'd go sleep on speakers, and so I'd just sleep on the subs or whatever. And that was my ride. And, that could explain some back problems.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I can still
So
fall asleep anywhere, though. I think. Can you still fall asleep anywhere?
no,
Is that a
I
trait we
can't.
learned? No, maybe I'll lose that trait
I
too.
used to be able to, but airplanes always kind of escaped me.
Yeah.
Like on an airplane, obviously, if you have a lay down seat, I'm good with that. I can
Yeah.
sleep, no problem at all. I take some melatonin and a little bit of wine, and I'm well out of, gone until they wake me up. We're landing, sir. You got to get off the damn plane.
Yeah.
But sitting upright in a seat, I'll nod off for 30 seconds here and there, but that's about it.
Yeah,
I
I'm
can't do
not
it
great at
anymore.
sleeping sitting up anymore, actually. But I used to be able to fall asleep anywhere. It was like the
Yeah.
trait of being a young kid who drove the van, set the PA up, tore it down again,
Yeah.
drove to the next place, and then
Yeah.
slept in the van. I think that was what it was. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, I used to when I was young. I used to be able to do that, but now I'm much pickier. Like I can't even sleep on the wrong pillow or something anymore. It's like What's that sound? I'm breathing. Oh, okay. Well, could you
Okay.
breathe quieter? You know,
Yeah.
my son is funny. My son, he's 6'4" or 6'5" now,
Uh-huh.
and he can't lay back in a seat. You know, even if he's in, you know, the regular first class seats on a plane, not the lay down ones, but like in a domestic flight first class,
Yeah.
he can't put the seat back and go to sleep. He has to lean forward onto the tray and put his head on his arms on the tray in front of him. I watch him and it's the most uncomfortable thing I've ever seen in my life. And he can
Yeah.
only do it for like 10, 15 minutes. So he'll do an 8-hour flight and get, you know, 20 minutes of sleep.
Oh,
And it's crazy. I feel
that
for the
sucks.
kid, but
Yeah, that sucks.
you better figure it out, you know, because
Yeah.
you're going to probably be flying a lot in your life. So,
Hey, and I'm pretty sure airplane seats aren't going to get any bigger. Let's put it that way.
yeah, yeah. So let's go back a little bit here. So you know,
Mm.
you're certainly not geezerly age. You know, usually. So
Geezer the age.
Eric Loader, who's a friend of mine, who runs Elation Lighting, he said that a geezer is at 50. You're
Oh, okay.
officially a geezer at 50. Before 50, you're not a geezer yet. So
Interesting.
we'll call you a special guest on Geezers of Gear
Oh,
or
thank you.
something.
Thank you. I
But
I have a friend
so
from Birmingham who's of age. He used to torment his Simply Red. Actually, I don't know if Simply Red are a thing for you guys, but
yeah, of course.
and he is from Birmingham, and he calls everybody geezer. All right, geezer, and
Yeah, I know.
he does call me geezer. I don't know whether that gives any kind of credit to the name, but
Well, I think geezer
in
is
his
just
world, I'm
mate.
credited as a
You
geezer.
know, it's just like saying
Yeah,
mate. Hello,
yeah.
mate.
Well, I'll
But
happily take being young. I'm all right with that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you're definitely young. Said from an old person though, so somebody will call you old.
Oh, lots of
Um,
people do call me old. This thing happens in touring where you're the youngest guy for what seems like eternity, and then you're never the middle guy. You're all of a sudden just the oldest guy.
isn't
I
that
swear
weird?
that's the thing that happens, and it's already
That is
starting
weird.
to happen to me on some tours. I was on a hip
Yeah.
hop tour last year, and I was the oldest guy on the bus. I was like,
Really?
yeah, and it only felt like 6 months before I was the youngest guy on the bus. You know?
So when you walk into a room, do they go, shh, shh, everybody
No,
quiet? Like you're the police?
sadly not. No,
Oh,
they
that's
carry on
funny.
talking nonsense, but
Yeah,
that's what
that's
we all
funny.
do, right?
You know, other than being in a band, I've never actually lived on a tour bus with a bunch of dudes. And so it's the thing that always shocks me. Like, I'm like, you're going out on tour. So you just meet the people
Oh
and
yeah.
then you're with 7 or 8 of them on a bus
Mm.
and you got to live on that bus for the next 4 months. Like, really? And they're like, yeah, why? You know, and I'm thinking, wow, I couldn't do that. You
It's
know,
quite
I
daunting,
can't
and
even share a hotel room with someone. I
this
hate
is a funny
sharing
thing.
hotel
I
rooms.
can't share a hotel room. Most people you meet in our industry cannot share a hotel room, but they can sleep,
Really?
in theory, 8 inches away from somebody else
I
because
know
they
it's
have to do
crazy.
that every night. Yeah, it's funny as I get older, I
Yeah.
I don't like, you know, what comes along with meeting a load of new people and sharing life together for a number amount of
Yeah.
months is, for me, is this feeling of feeling like you have to fit in with people. And there's always the awkward kind of first few days of everybody getting to know each other. And you don't
Yeah.
want to look like you're an asshole for those. And I hate that whole period. You know what I mean? Nowadays, I just think, I wish the asshole would be an asshole just so we know. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, why
and
hide it? We're going to find out sooner or later. You
right,
know?
right. Um,
Yeah.
but like they say, the golden rule of a bus is there's always one hassle, and if you don't know who it is, then it's you, right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I
because
thought the
there's always
golden
a.
rule was don't shit on the bus.
Well, that went out the window.
Oh, really? People do
No,
on the bus now?
hey, well, on artist buses they
Or
do.
just
I'm
you?
not crew buses. I don't. I've never done
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I like to hear lots of old school stories about people having to do it in a bin liner, right? They line the toilet with a bin liner,
Oh my God.
and then do it in the bin liner, and then sorry,
That's
but yeah,
crazy.
I've never done that either. I'm
Yeah.
comfortable enough to go to the driver and say, hey, if you don't want to miss, let's stop. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah. So, how did you get started in this crazy world that we're
I,
in?
I got started out in this industry by loving music, and originally, as I was at school, I was in like the school brass band. I played the drums back then,
Ah,
and I didn't play a brass instrument. I played the drums,
yeah.
and from playing the drums, came across the school concert, and then ended up meeting a guy who worked for the local PA company, audio company. But also, at the same time that was happening, my dad worked for the parks department and was organizing kind of small local band festivals in the parks. And he was using the same audio company. So there was
Oh,
like a connection of, oh, you're so-and-so's son. Oh, yeah, you're the guy that talks to
well,
my dad about
leverage too.
PA.
Leverage.
Right,
Do you
maybe.
still want all
In
that
hindsight,
local city work?
yeah, do you still want to mix
You
those
better give
crap
me a
local
job,
bands?
mate. Yeah,
So
that's
I
funny.
ended up doing work experience placement from school. They could either send you somewhere random, or you could write the name of a business, and they would contact the business and say, do you want this kid from work experience placement for 2 weeks or not? They said yes. I ended up getting to know what happens in a PA company. It's mostly sitting around, in the UK, it's mostly sitting around drinking cups of tea, moaning about the state of the world, and painting speaker cabinets, right? And I thought, I can get with this. This is my kind of vibe. I like tea.
So here
And
you are sitting around 20 years later doing the same thing.
right, yeah,
Painting speaker cabinets and drinking tea
pretty much.
and
No,
talking shit.
and then it's
Yeah.
a classic story of like, I got to learn everything. I stood behind everybody. I was the guy that could plug things in. They would let me plug things in for a bit. And, and then I kept hanging around at this company. Once I'd done my placement there from school, it was an open door of like, hey, if you're ever passing by, come in for a brew, right? Or a cup of tea. So that turned into me just hanging out there all the time, basically.
You were hooked.
I was hooked, yeah.
Were you
And
hooked
then
on the technology or the environment or
I
what
was hooked on both, I would say, in hindsight.
Yeah.
Both. I loved, to be honest, here's the thing. I loved what the physical air movement of large speakers did to your body.
Yeah.
It was the first time I'd ever actually felt music, not just heard it. And that was something that used to happen at concerts. Maybe it still happens now and we're immune to it. I don't know. I remember when I used to go to a concert and the drummer used to hit the bass drum or the kick drum, you used to feel it in your body. And that was the only place, was a live concert, you could get that feeling.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I went and saw Metallica last summer in a stadium in Canada I have a house in Canada where I go in the summer.
Yeah.
And they've got all of that Meyer stuff. And I have no idea the ungodly number of subs that are under that stage.
Yeah.
But I was standing right in front of them and I feel like I moved every time he kicked the kick drum.
Yeah.
I was going backwards like this, it was a feeling.
Yeah, so I got into that, and I remember my dad took me to see AC/DC when I must have been about 15 or 16. It was the first concert I ever saw in Manchester Arena, which was new back then. Anyway, and it was AC/DC, and I remember they did the line check through the PA. So I think it was Slash's Snake Pit supported them, and then they came on and they were doing the line check, and the drum tech hit the kick drum, and I might have even said out loud, but I definitely said in my head, if I can't play the drums, I want to make them sound like that. And that was, and I remember that vividly.
That's so cool. That's great.
And I guess I kind of did, although I went down more of a monitor engineer path. Sorry, that's just me.
Why was that? Was that because it was easier or?
No, it was.
I mean, easier to get a gig.
It was easy to get a gig because everybody wanted to be the front of house guy, right?
Right, of course.
To this day, I still call the front of house the golden end of the multi-core and the monitor side the brown end.
That's hilarious.
I still call it that to this day because
that's funny.
In reality, they're both as easy or as difficult as the artist and everything around him makes it. But it was easier to get a monitor gig because everybody wanted to move to front of house. And I found you learn more at monitor end. You're with the artist, you see in real time how things are happening. From the side of the stage, you can see what happens when the artist doesn't sing directly into the microphone. You can hear it at the same time. In front of house, you might not develop that level of learning or why something is happening the way it is as you do from being close to it.
Well, I've always wondered, like, for me, being a monitor engineer would probably in many ways be harder because your critic is the band.
Sure.
Versus your critic being a bunch of, drunken, stoned people in the audience. They're going to complain no matter what. But the band is who you really need to impress. And if the monitors are bad, you're going to know about it.
Sure, yeah. As a monitor engineer, of course, I would happily continue driving this point home with you. In reality, you know, when the singer's mom goes out front, maybe being a being a front of house guy is harder when the singer's mom stood next to you, maybe. But
Well, yeah,
I
mothers
like
know
the
everything, right?
connection with the band. I like the connection with the band. I like, and ultimately, there's this romantic thing about I've always liked to make people happy. I think everybody has this certain thing inside them that wants to make people happy and wants to bring people. I like to bring people into a moment where they can, you know, you can see the whole room go up when there's a vibe. It's like, shoot,
Yeah,
when I used to jam with friends, you get into this click, this moment of, and you all do the same thing at the same time musically, you know, and
yeah.
it's like this euphoric feeling. The same thing can happen, I think, in a room full of people with a band playing, you know, and
You know, it's funny. I have a nephew in Canada. His name is Adam,
mhm,
and he is a monitor engineer who has been doing monitors for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years now.
yeah,
And every time I talk to him, I'm like, Adam, I can probably get you into a bigger sound company on a tour because he does local gigs,
yeah,
festivals, and things like that. I can get you on a tour. You can work your way up to front of house. And he's like, no, I love being a monitor engineer. And I said,
good,
why? And he said, because I feel like I'm on stage, like I'm part of the band, as opposed
yeah,
to way the hell out there,
hmm,
And so same basic thing that you're saying right now.
yeah. I like. There's a connection you have with the band. Of course, there's the toughness of it. You know, you are also without knowing it for a lot of times they're psychologists, the band psychologist, and if they're not having a great time, you will know about it, and
Yeah.
you know. But there's also a great responsibility and a great sense of achievement that comes with that when it goes right. You know,
Yeah.
when you can tell somebody's having not a great time, and you can improve that situation for them. It's
Yeah.
great. You do go round and round in circles. I mean, I work with some difficult artists, and I have worked with difficult artists over the years. But I totally get where it comes from. I used to take it really personally when an artist would lose their head, you know, and shout or scream. But then I just imagine you are in front of 100,000 people and something's going wrong, and the whole room's looking at you. You know, I totally get it. I
Yeah.
totally get it. Like you could convent, do it. Come on, let's do it. As long as it stays in this moment, and when we go off stage, we all have a hug. Fine. But I
You
couldn't
know,
do
I
that previously. I used to carry it with me, and I used to think, "Oh, I'm terrible." You know, I'm my own. I'm very self-critical, and I think we all are. And I think that used to really do me in. That I used to think, "Well, I'm not good enough to do this." Because
yeah.
and
One time I was at this is a long time ago, but I was standing at Madonna rehearsals. I was at
mm,
front of house with the LD,
yeah,
and Madonna is notoriously a fairly mean and nasty woman. And so she stops because her microphone kept cutting out.
yeah,
And she stops and she just starts berating the monitor guy.
mm,
And, he's like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And you can hear the whole thing because we're just in a small facility at rehearsals.
sure,
And she says, well, why is my mic cutting out and none of theirs are? And the monitor guy said, well, because they're on different channels than yours. And she said, well, put me on their fucking channel, you idiot. And we're all like, yeah, that'll go well, honey. That'll go really well,
yeah.
you know? So
I
it's
know
just funny.
a good friend of mine I say friend, colleague of mine has been Madonna's monitor engineer for about 15 years. And I
Mm.
know him very well, but we all have like this, there's an internal kind of WhatsApp message group. None of us want to be him, you know. Well, he's always very happy to offload a little bit of his frustrations, shall we
I
say,
can't
which
even
we all are
imagine.
with every gig, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's definitely one that I don't think I would
Yeah.
take.
I can't imagine. Well, another one, do you know Jim Yakubuski or do you know of him?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I knew him growing up. I
Hmm,
I owned a music store after I got off the road playing music, and
hmm,
he was a customer of mine. He was a local sound guy, and we became
funny.
very good friends. They called him Jim Pass the Busky, and
That's the bus.
and but anyways, great sound guy even in clubs and stuff. But when he first started, he started with I think with DB Sound in Chicago,
Hmm.
and he was doing monitors. And one of his early gigs was with Yngwie Malmsteen.
Oh God, right.
And so not only is he hard to work for, hard to talk to, hard to communicate with, whatever, but he wants his guitar in every monitor at warp volume. and so nobody can hear themselves. Nobody, this was wedge monitors, not in ear,
Yeah.
and nobody could hear anything except his guitar. It was just so loud on stage, and if there was ever feedback through a microphone, he would just look over at him like, "I will kill you," with this look on his face, like, "I'm going to murder you and then fire you,"
Jeez.
So yeah, it sounds like a tough gig to me, being a monitor guy.
It was. There was a time when being a monitor guy was just how loud you can get a vocal in a wedge, though. That
Yeah,
was quite fun. And then in-ears came along, and now it's like how some people's in-ear mix is like, we call it the record. What does their in-ear mix sound like? Sounds like the record. Some people just want to hear like a front of house mix with themselves a little bit louder, which could be very. That's a very critical kind of thing to do.
yeah,
It was way easier when he just wanted a kick drum and a really loud vocal in a
yeah.
wedge for sure. But in-ears also it's ruined music in my opinion. Here's the thing we should talk about. And
Really
you being a
interesting.
musician.
Yeah.
So I can blind test. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to make that claim, but I'm going to say you can definitely tell the difference between a band playing who are on in-ears and a band playing who are on wedges. Dynamically, there's a huge difference.
And why is that?
I just think it's down to dynamics, and people have to intricately listen when you're not being forced it in your ear. I think that's what it is. It's like you go and see, or you put a Clapton live live thing on YouTube now. When somebody starts soloing, everybody else plays quieter. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's genuine. I can tell the difference. And my wife works for Steely Dan, and I went to see Steely Dan, and I'm like, it was the first time I'd seen a band that big nowadays with not wearing in ears.
Yeah.
And I was in and it was the most amazing. Obviously, it's Steely Dan. It's going to be great.
I mean,
but
talk about a band that sounds like the CD,
right? Yeah, yeah,
exactly like it.
But the dynamics and the way people play. And then I started doing a couple of shows, and a band I worked for them was still on wedges, and I was like, these guys do play differently to guys who are wearing in ears. And it's not obviously one of the things. Maybe is just that you can't use a click when you're playing on wedges. Maybe that's what it is, and maybe I like music that moves.
It's just more natural. Yeah, it's more natural. Yeah.
But yeah, I know.
I've never heard that before. That's a really interesting observation. I like it.
I've talked to a few monitor engineers about it, and it's a common consensus among the ones I've spoke with. Let's say, I'm not saying we should go back to wedges. I'm just saying there's definitely a kind of music that suits wedges, and I would say pop suits in-ears. No doubt about it.
At the start of a tour especially with a new act that you've not worked with before, do you like kind of sit down and have a little meeting with them and talk about what they want in their ears? And is every guy or girl got their own, you want it like this, you want it like this, you want it like this, and they get their own mix or whatever? Or
so sadly, in my experience, there's never the opportunity to do this with anybody. You have to everybody has their own go-to things that they do. I think every monitor engineer.
So instead of finding out what they love, you find out what they hate first, because they just go,
right.
That
basically,
sucked.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get more specific. What part of it sucked? All of it.
Yeah, well, that would definitely be a lead singer's reply. Yeah, but
yeah.
And I think most people do the same. You just build a mix with them slightly louder in the mix than everybody else. That's like your first thing, your go-to thing, and then I think, any pro musician can play to that. But then you get into the detail of, actually, I like to hear this a bit louder. In this song, I actually pitch from the acoustic guitar when the rest of the time I pitch from the piano. And that all starts. But I can't say I've ever, other than with, let's say, when I work for a solo artist, I'll make an effort to speak to the solo artist and say, hey, nice to meet you. I'm going to give you a mix. But is there anything you really don't want?
Yeah. Well, unless they're really a new artist, they probably know exactly what they want, and they'll come to you and say, I'd like a little bit of this, a lot of this, some of this, and
sure.
Whatever you do, don't do this.
Yeah, but then here's the thing that's interesting is that when you're the first monitor engineer for a new artist who is on in ears, are you the basis for what they then hear for the rest of their career? Because that's quite a responsibility, if you will.
That's true too, huh?
The first time they really have a great show on stage, they're hearing the mix that you're giving to them. I wonder sometimes if subconsciously that mix is then their point of reference, for everything that comes ahead in their career.
Interesting. That's an interesting thought. Yeah.
Inside the
I never
mind of a
thought of
monitor
any of
engineer.
these things. I just thought, you either hear it out of that speaker in front of you or you hear it in your ears like big. I never played with in-ear monitors. I've never, because
Mm,
I'm too old. So when I quit playing live, in-ears hadn't come out yet. So I've only
yeah.
ever played with wedges in front of me. So that's very, very interesting. Huh.
Yeah, it's something I mean, I had one of those types of people that likes to dive into the psychology
Yeah.
of everything I'm doing. So,
Well, I would guess
to my
feedback's no
detriment
longer an
sometimes.
issue, right?
Feedback's no longer an issue, but
Yeah.
the other thing I see is that people don't project as much now when they sing.
Hmm.
People, a singer used to have to project, and they used to have a certain amount of microphone technique because they could hear it directly. When they're stood with a microphone in their hand and the sound's coming out of that speaker next to them, they will automatically, their brain will know this kind of hand-to-eye movement or whatever. Oh, it gets louder when I do this. It gets quieter when I do this. They're not. But nowadays on in-ears, singers are singing like this, going, "Hey, dude, I can't hear myself."
Yeah.
And because the technology is there, it's like the connection between the brain and their hand doesn't occur.
Interesting.
There's
Huh.
kind of no direct relation in somebody's head anymore, or not in some people's ears, but between the thing they're holding in their hand and the noise that's coming out of their in-ears. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas with
That's cool.
with a mic and a wedge, it was. Yeah, but it doesn't
So,
necessarily mean singers might be getting better because of it, because they don't have to
yeah.
project. I'm not saying it's a
Yeah.
negative thing, but it's just things I've noticed. You
So
you
we
can.
we we jumped off of your founding. We jumped off of your start in the business. So
Did we? Oh,
you were using your dad's leverage to get gigs in rental companies.
okay.
And so they eventually hired you, obviously, right?
They
To
did.
sit
So
around and paint boxes and drink tea.
yeah, and then occasionally do the odd gig. There was a blues festival. I grew up in a really sad northern town in England where we had a blues festival. That's how sad the town was.
Yeah.
Anyway, so every year there was a blues festival, and I was helping it was actually the front of house engineer set up for this blues festival, and then he fell ill during the setup, right? And he was like, "I'm gonna have to go on. Do you think you can do this?" And I was like, "I'm gonna say yes, whether I think I can do it or not," right?
Of course.
And that was kind of like my baptism of fire. Then all of a sudden, I was there mixing bands, and it was like that was the push I needed. And then they started hiring me from that. Basically, they had to pay me for
Wow.
doing that shift, obviously.
That's cool.
And then they started hiring me, and then I started getting into bands. And then I went on tour with a punk band called The Damned.
Huh?
When I was 17, I went on tour with monitors for The Damned, and then from then it kind of snowballed. And then I left that little PA company I was working for and started working with different bands, and now I've become a production manager for the last 3
Yeah.
years who
So
still
did you
mixes
ever become
monitors.
a front of house guy, or you just always stayed monitors and then you went straight to production management?
Or what I did was if I was a front of house engineer for an artist, and this happened quite a few times, and if I was a monitor engineer for the artist, and the front of house engineer couldn't make a show, the artist would
You fill in.
suggest that I would mix
Oh,
front of
that's a
house.
good thing. That's a
Well,
good thing.
and it kind of makes sense to me because it's like, well, Aaron knows the show,
Yeah.
and he knows the music, so he can go out
Yeah.
front and do that. And I quite liked that because there was kind of no pressure. It wasn't my idea. It wasn't me saying, "Hey, I can go and do front of house." It was like somebody saying, "Hey, can you go on?" So, and I like that. And I remember it was Pink Pop Festival. It's quite a big festival in Holland, and it was Paul McCartney was headlining. Lionel Richie was second from headline. And the artist I was working for was third from headline on the main stage. And it was pretty cool. All of a sudden, without knowing it, I was stood with, some great front of house engineers, and I enjoyed that day.
How
I
many
wouldn't.
people were in the audience? Was it a stadium? It was a big
It was
thing,
it was
or
probably 80,000. It's a festival.
oh Jesus!
It
Wow.
was it was actually an
Cool.
Adamson rig. It was a huge Adamson rig,
Yeah.
and it was just awesome. I enjoyed it, but there was no pressure on me. There was the pressure I was putting on myself of like, okay, you better actually be good at this because you've kind of took a shortcut here to mixing one of the biggest festivals.
Right.
But I liked it. We got to spend 4 days in a rehearsal studio in London, and I had a PA in my own room, and I could literally just rebuild the mix as many times as I wanted, and basically learn how to be a front of house guy if I'd have needed to in those 4 days. So then
So
that's
how do you
happened.
think it went?
I think it went really well.
Yeah.
I
It
think it
sounded
did.
good.
Yeah. Um, and then I've done it for OMD quite a few times, actually. The front of house guys
Oh
have turned
wow.
up. And and even though it's not my kind of music, I go out there, make it sound like I think it should sound, and then that's that. But
Yeah.
I never actually wanted to be a front of house engineer, I don't think.
Huh. That's an interesting thing. It's like I know lighting directors that never really wanted to be the lighting designer. They just
Mm.
they want to program the show or go out and operate the show on tour, but they don't necessarily want to be the guy who sits with the artist and makes all the decisions on what the show should look like. You know?
I think it's good to have people like that, though, right? If everybody comes on tour hoping to be the tour manager, how would that make the tour manager feel?
Yeah, I know.
You
I
feel like
know.
everybody wants my job.
Yeah. Well, plus you're not taking the job you're in seriously if you're always looking at the one above it,
Right.
as opposed to the one that you're in. How about being the best at the one that you're in, so that people are talking about you and wanting to hire you? It's job security.
Yeah, sure.
Delicate Productions. Since 1980, Delicate Productions has mastered the art of lighting, audio, and video in high energy live settings, from iconic music festivals to global tours, corporate launches, award shows, sporting events, and beyond. For Delicate, the only way to get it right is to get it just right. With precision, creativity, and full service production capabilities, they turn bold visions into moments that linger in pop culture's subconscious. Need a single touring partner to handle audio, lighting, video rigging, and production design? Delicate delivers it all flawlessly. Located in the greater Los Angeles area and part of the Live Events Productions Network, Delicate has access to a deep nationwide inventory of gear and is powered by a highly skilled team amplifying your tour's full potential. Whether you need rigging, production design, or end-to-end show management, they deliver it all seamlessly. And it doesn't end there. Delicate delivers a full 360-degree production experience by teaming up with sister company Pyrotechnico, experts in fireworks, special effects, and drone light shows. Together, they create truly immersive, multi-sensory experiences that elevate every show. Visit delicate.com to see how unforgettable events get made. That's delicate.com, where technical brilliance meets creative impact. Yeah. So when did you start on the production manager thing then? How long ago was that?
I think it's 5 years ago now, I think. I'd been with OMD, and I'd kind of got them on it as nailed. The OMD show is it's now time coded. It's very, sharp production wise in the terms of, and they always play this tunes. Once we rehearse and then we go out, it's always the same show.
Yeah.
You might throw a song in here and there, but it's very programmed. It's very easy they're very electronic. So there's not a lot of variant changes. I think we have four live mics on the stage. The rest is all DI'd.
How many actual musicians or members are in OMD?
There's four musicians on stage. Yeah.
Okay.
2 keyboards, drums, and a singer who plays the bass.
Okay. Yeah. And how many are original still? Because they were big in the 80s.
So I don't know how to diplomatically say this. There's 2 main guys, Paul and Andy. Martin, who's the second keyboard player, has been there since the beginning. And then there's Stuart on drums, who came in the 90s, basically.
Oh, okay.
But as a band, there was a drummer who was with them as long as Martin, but he fell ill and didn't want to go on tour anymore. But they've been together a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that was happening. I was kind of searching for something else to get into. If I wanted to stay with the band, because I love the crew and I like the band and the tour man, and then I started just getting into mischief. Basically, I started, unconsciously, how do you say it? Without thinking, causing problems just to repair them. I wasn't doing this deliberately. It was a trait that people were noticing about me, like, and they know I'm not the kind of person to sabotage something, so they were like, "What's going on here?" So the tour manager pulled me in, and he's based in Nashville. Pulled me into the office one day and said, "Hey, how are you doing anyway?" I said, "I'm all right." He said, "Are you kind of getting bored here?" And I was like, and it's hard to say yes. You don't want to say, "Yeah, I'm bored of this shit," But I said, why? What are you thinking? He said, I think you'd probably make a good production manager. You've been here long enough. You know the ropes. And you seem to be interested in that side of things. And I was like, and I turned it down. Here's what happened. I turned it
Really?
down. Yeah. I was like, no. Everyone's going to, because I'd, but then I started to think about it. And I started to think that could actually be something I'd be interested in doing. And my wife is a production assistant. She works with some huge names. And I thought, I'm going to ask Tanya what a production manager actually does. Because let's be honest, we're all stuck in our own little jobs on tour.
Of course,
And
yeah.
no, you think you know what everybody
Yeah,
does,
you
but
know
you
what you
don't.
think he does, but you don't
Right.
know exactly, like in his hotel room yesterday or the day before, what was he doing, or
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
bus, what's he doing,
Yeah. So, and then there's still things now that I've learned, oh, that's my job, is it? And I think every role varies with the different artists you work for. What you actually do, you might be the guitar tech, but the guitar tech on this camp also does whatever, gives the
Yeah.
drummer a water twice a show, whatever. It's the same in every other capacity. So I started to think about it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I had a chat with the crew, and I said, guys, I'm going to do this, but I don't know everything. All right. And I'm not going to pretend to know everything. Can you just push me along here? And then we did that, and it worked out really well.
Well, that's a great attitude to take, obviously. Like if you go in there like a, big, swinging, whatever, and you think you know everything, and you're acting differently towards the crew and stuff, they're probably going to rebel against you. But if you go in and say, guys, I really don't know how to do this gig, but I'm going to do my best at it, and I want you to call me out when I'm missing something,
Yeah.
that's going to be really well received, I would expect.
Yeah, and it worked really well. And then kind of parallel to that, then I started to get into like the dirty bit of the industry, the finance bit, the money
Yeah.
bit, and the deals side of it, and things that I had no idea about. And that
Yeah.
led me into, now I do kind of local promoter work in Germany too, where I'll go and work for the promoter. So I see both sides of the money side of the business now. And I actually find
Right.
it really interesting. If you'd have asked me even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, would you want to get into the accounting side of the music industry? I'd be like, no way. But I
Yeah.
find it really interesting. And maybe it's just like learning something new. I've always liked learning things.
Yeah.
So I'm getting into that side of it. I don't know whether I still call myself a monitor engineer. And even at the bottom of my email, it doesn't say production manager. It says OMD production manager / monitor engineer. I wouldn't go and try and take a Jake Berry gig or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm just, I'm good. I think I'm doing a pretty good job of working with this band, production managing the band I've been with for a long time.
Yeah.
It is something I'd like to pursue,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't put myself out there yet, I don't think. But I'm enjoying the
Really?
journey. I'm enjoying the journey
Really?
so far. Yeah.
So, do you do both? Are you doing
I do
monitor
both. Yeah,
slugging
I do
still as
both.
well? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you do when they're not touring then? Do you just go back to the local sound company and say,
No,
"Put me in, coach"?
I have another artist who I don't production manage. I just mix monitors for, called Anastacia.
Okay.
It's quite big, and she's American actually, but she's huge in Europe.
Yeah. I know
I'm
who she
still
is.
just mix monitors for her. It's quite funny that now, because I'm a PM, that feels like a holiday now. It's very funny to say, and everything used to feel like hard work.
Yeah.
And it still is hard work, don't get me wrong, but it's nice to just go and concentrate on one role and do
Yeah.
that. And then other than that, yeah, local local promoter work, promoter rep.
And both those tours seem to just never cross over each other.
Oh, they cross over all the time, but
Yeah,
I always
you
manage to
figure it out.
dep out Anastacia because
Yeah.
it manages to work out. And luckily they're very accommodating and they're aware of my situation.
That's cool.
Anastacia, when we played a gig in Denver with OMD, Anastacia came to visit us because she lives in Denver. And
Yeah.
it's funny, she got to see me doing the other role and everything. It was really nice.
Yeah. So, I want to talk a little bit about sort of something I know that's important to you, mental health, and especially while touring. And also, like, I know this podcast is called Geezers of Gear. We get a lot of people who are in their 60s and 70s who are on this, who were really part of the foundation of the industry in the 60s and 70s. And I think you kind of came in at the tail end of the heavy drug use and just total mayhem and full on drunkenness and all of, I mean, I know there's still a lot of this stuff that goes on the road, but it's much less than it was. The
Yeah.
70s and 80s were just, complete batshit mayhem, right?
So I've heard.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's funny because Avolite's consoles always had a little drawer for the keyboard,
Hmm.
and nobody used it for a keyboard.
There was
It
a
had
mirror in
lines
there,
of
right?
blow on it. No, it just
Yeah.
had lines of blow laid out, and right in the middle of the show,
Yeah.
somebody had just hit it,
Mm.
and it was rampant. And so, I know you told me when we were before we even got on here that you actually quit drinking, and I
I
think that
did.
that's an incredible decision for someone who's in this lifestyle where every night feels like a party, no matter how much you don't want it to feel that way.
Mm.
Um,
I
so,
so
tell me a how you got to be more interested in mental health and more focused on it, but just how you cope with it and what that's like on the road and that kind of stuff.
so like you said, I did come in the very end of the 90s, I would say. Let's just say when I started hanging around in the scene, and there was still very much there was a group of people who I grew up working with and I learnt from who were still doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And I felt like I had to partake in order to fit
yeah.
in, and did.
Hmm.
And it did lead me down a road of because I was still learning back then. I was still young. I was a kid, really. And I'm not
Yeah,
blaming anybody else, but I think it it masked a lot of things I was going through. And I've only just recently, I'm 149 days sober, so it's
good for you.
probably quite early to talk about this. But
No, but 149 days, you're over the hump for the
oh
most
yeah,
part,
but I
and
mean and I've been in 26 years in the industry now, 25 years maybe, and so all that time there was drug use, if I'm honest, and there was a lot of drinking, and I would it was just what you did, right? It was, you finished the gig, you cracked open a beer, you got on the bus, you shot the shit, and that was your therapy. And
yeah,
genuinely, that was the therapy. You had a hard day, we'd all shout at each other. We were in a freezing cold ice arena, whatever. Everyone was having a shit day. We all got on the bus, we drank a beer, we did a line, and then we were all right. We were
yeah,
friends
you're
again,
good.
right?
Yeah,
And that was a kind of therapy, and I'm sure that got people through years in the industry. My thing was what happens when I get home. You know what I mean?
that's true.
I,
PTSD.
I was very good at being Aaron on tour. I was really good at being Aaron on tour, right? But I wasn't good at being Aaron at home, and I
Mm.
and I didn't realize that it was because of Aaron on tour that I wasn't good at being Aaron at home.
So did you just try and shut everything off when you got home, or did you try
Yeah,
and sustain it when you got home?
so for a long time I shut it down because obviously you don't wake up in the morning and do a line of coke right at home.
Yeah,
But uh, I didn't know who I was. You don't get a day sheet at home. You don't have a
yeah,
place to be. You don't have a job. You don't have a role. You're just you at home. And I didn't know I couldn't cope with me having a role and having an importance on the road and a schedule and a thing and then a big party at the end of it. I couldn't cope with the concept of going home and going, what do I do now? I've got to do my washing. Okay, that ticks one thing. Well, then what do I do? I
yeah.
couldn't.
That's wild.
It's taken me years and years. And bearing in mind, I've been
Yeah,
married for 11 years. My poor
yeah,
wife. Um, but it took me years, and I just couldn't. And then I started behaving at home like I was on tour because I figured I must be Aaron on tour. That must be who I am.
yeah. Loves
And
a party.
basically, I've been trying to align these two people into being just Aaron for as long as I can remember. And I'm my journey of trying to align these two people so he's just one person who can be good at work and could be good at home has led me now to stop drinking and doing everything, and it seems to be improving. And I'm not saying everybody should stop drinking. I hate preaching to people. I'm not.
Yeah,
Drinking works for some people, and like I said, it can be a form of therapy if that's what brings you closer to other people. Maybe there's nothing wrong with it. Um, but I just became really focused on mental health, and I could see other people having the same problem as me, which And that was one thing that kind of helped me. I didn't feel so alien. I didn't feel like there's something wrong with me because I could see it in other people, but we never told each other.
Mm.
We never said, "Hey, this is all great fun, but what do you do when you get home?"
Yeah.
We never had that
Real
conversation.
men don't talk about that stuff.
No, right.
Yeah.
Hey, do you ever, when you get home from a tour, do you ever feel like a certain way? You know what I mean? Nobody ever had that conversation.
Yeah.
And then I met like-minded people like Sarah, who's the producer of your show, and people like that on a tour, and then we just started talking about it. And I was like, this makes perfect sense to talk about it. I still love talking about gear, and hopefully we will start talking about gear and stuff in a minute.
Yeah.
But it's important to talk about real life too. Like, we're all real people,
Completely agree.
The people on stage, and I always used to use this kind of this anecdote or whatever you would call it. That I used to say, if the singer on stage has a meltdown, and then the next day comes out with all this mental health stuff, it's like it's glorified. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is amazing that this person's speaking out about mental health." If their guitar tech has a meltdown, they're chastised by the whole crew, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
They're fired and replaced.
I mean, hopefully it's not like that. It's slowly becoming not like that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was okay for the artist to stand on stage and rightfully so share their journey of mental health and everything they go through. They go from 100,000 people screaming their name, being in awe of them, to 20 minutes later being sat in a hotel room on their own. That's a real,
it's wild.
real head fuck,
Yeah.
So they're cool to share that journey, but we all go on that journey with them too, to a certain extent. We're all part of this team effort to build something, make it great. We all go through shit days. Oh, the gig happened really well. Woo, let's load out. Yes, well, we did it. We all, there's this sense of euphoria. Then it stops.
Yeah.
And it's something that I
So
could
now,
never cope
as
with.
PM though, do you talk to like your crew about this stuff? Like, do you
Absolutely.
say, guys, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. I'm
Sure.
not telling you to drink. I'm not telling you not to drink. I'm not telling you to do anything. I am telling you to make sure you show up on time. And if you're a mess when you show up, I'm probably going to have you sit down and have a conversation with me. But other than that, I'm not your father. But I am paying attention.
I do. I try to look out for people. It's tough, isn't it? Because if you're aware that somebody is struggling a little bit, to a certain extent, the last thing you want to do is tell them you're aware. Because I'm sure that's the last thing they want to know is that, oh, people have noticed that I'm struggling. That's not something that's a great feeling, is it? It's a really tough thing, and that's why I think I've always been a great advocate for just making it a thing everyone can talk about.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, you know what I mean? Why can't we just talk about it? If you wake up with a cough in the morning, there's no hiding it, is there? You're gonna cough.
Yeah.
People are gonna know. Well, it's no different, really, to a certain extent. You wake up feeling shit. Just tell people it's fine. We all wake up feeling shit sometimes. And it sure. And there's a stigma of, oh, he's having a bad day. Does that mean he's gonna fuck up at his job? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the other kind of fear you have of. And I've got to say, like, the people in our industry, they'll always do their job to their own detriment. You know what I mean?
It's true.
You never have to worry about people doing their job. That's the one thing they are going to do. Their whole life might fall apart, but they will do their job,
It's crazy. I mean, I've seen people, who can hardly see 2 feet in front of them. They're so wasted and they still manage to put on a great show, So how do you say too much about that? But one thing I'm wondering is, you're married to someone in the industry as well. I think you said she's a production assistant.
Yeah.
And does that make all of this harder or easier?
One thing that makes it harder is that she can deal with it way better than me. She can go on tour, and she's a production coordinator. She's got 30 flights in the air. She's booking hotels. This person can't make, all that stuff. Different level of head fuck going on, but she can get home, walk through the door, and she's home, and she's back in home mode like that.
Really?
And yeah. And not many people in the world can do that. So that made it harder for me because it made me feel more pathetic in a way. You know what I mean?
I feel for you, man. Don't they all do that to us, though? Isn't that women's jobs?
They're all awesome. Let's be honest. Pathetic? Yeah, but it was, but it was. She could understand elements of it for sure. But the hardest bit was when I would come home, she would go on tour, which would make it easier for me to be airing on tour at home, if you know what I mean.
Right.
You know,
Well,
and
because now you also have an excuse. Like, I'm here, I'm bored. What else am I going to do? I'm
yeah,
going to go out
right,
with the boys and have a
sure,
few pints, and you never know what happens then.
right. This is the
Yeah.
thing. So that it just became one big mess, and it's not an easy thing to do what we do, is it? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
For your head, some people can do it. Tanya would, if she was here, she's in the other room. She'd be screaming around. No, yeah, it is easy. You just got to get a grip or whatever. And
Yeah.
some people can do that. So
Yeah.
some people, and I can't. And I'm to be the first to admit, and I will happily tell anybody who's having a bad day, even on a tour I'm on, hey, I totally feel it, and it's totally normal to be having a bad day, to be missing home, to not know who you're supposed to be, to think that the 10 people on your bus don't like you. We all know these thoughts,
Yeah.
and it's natural, what we're doing. We are, like you said, I don't know whether we were recording when you said it, but we're all shoved on a bus with the people we might have never met. It's like, hey
Yeah.
guys, you're going to live together for 8 weeks, have fun.
And
And by the way,
don't
you've
kill
got
each
to,
other.
yeah, you've got to do a
Yeah.
really hard job all day and deal with all the politics of that, and then we're going to put a load of drink in the fridge
Yeah.
for you
Yeah.
every night.
Some
And
pizzas and 24 beers. Go have
yeah,
fun. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And but don't get me wrong, we're very privileged to do what we do. And
Yeah.
I remember also going to see Dream Theater when I was a kid.
One of my
I sat,
favorites, by the way.
dude, Dream Theater, one of my favorite bands of all time. But I
Well, we're
remember,
both musicians. Like,
right?
you go see Dream Theater and you don't see a lot of hot girls in the crowd. That's for sure. You see people
No,
playing air guitars and air drums and yeah, bunch
it
of
was
dudes.
it was on the 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence tour actually, and it was
Yeah.
Manchester Apollo. And I was sat on the balcony. I could see the monitor desk, and I was like, if I could only do monitors in Manchester Apollo for a band. And I remind myself of this. It was like a dream. I remind myself of this story every time I'm in Manchester Apollo. And I share the story with everybody in catering. And the people who tour with me more or are on the same tour with me get so fed up of it. Because every time I'm in catering's under the stage in the Manchester Apollo. I say, guys, I just want to stop. I want to tell everybody something.
And they're like, shut up. We
Yeah,
know
yeah.
this story, Aaron.
But the people who are young and not prepared to admit that they've always wanted to do this for a living are really grateful for it. They're like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm so glad
Well,
somebody
that's
else.
your pinch me moment, right?
Sure.
And everyone has them.
And I make sure to remind myself of that too. I remember I was doing Cat Stevens rehearsals in there when I was doing monitors for Cat Stevens, and we were having a horrible time. And I remember I had to stop myself and go, you're in Manchester Apollo. This was like that's my Madison Square Garden, let's say. I was like, no matter how bad this moment is, you always wanted it. So deal with it,
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you're moving into gear a little bit here. Thank you for
Yes.
sharing all that with me, by the way. I love conversations about either struggles or mental health or abuse. There's a gentleman in our industry, I don't know if you know him, named John Wiseman, and he's one of the most honest and straight in your face kind of guys there is. He's a like head of touring or something for PRG.
Okay.
Very, very successful in our industry. One of the most successful account execs ever, and does really big stuff. But he was a notorious drug addict and was running Verilight while he was a notorious drug addict and alcoholic in the 80s and 90s, and ran light and sound design sales as a notorious drug addict and alcoholic.
Right.
And he'll tell you crazy funny stories about when he was wasted out of his mind on drugs and alcohol and whatever, and all of that stuff. And he'll also tell you exactly when he hit rock bottom and had to go borrow money from his parents to go to rehab, or else he was going to die.
Yeah.
And I think he's about 30 years clean and sober now, and super successful, happiest guy in the world, just happy to be alive every day.
Yeah.
And so grateful that he was given, another chance at life. And I'll tell you this right now.
Yeah.
If you ever feel a bit down, like, maybe I should go back to my old ways or whatever, shoot me an email and I'll connect you with John, and he'll have a 5-minute conversation with you about what happened to his life when he finally hit rock bottom and made that. And I mean, this is a guy who was doing, an ounce of blow every day and a
Mm.
bottle of Jack Daniels and a dozen beer too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he was over the top.
Yeah.
So,
Jeez.
but going on to gear.
Yeah.
And
Go on.
so I know that you live in Germany.
I live in Germany.
But
Yes.
why do you live in Germany? Sounds
Because
like a
my
girl thing.
it's the love thing. Yeah. My wife's
Of
German.
course. Yeah, there you go.
Nobody ever believes she's German. She tours with Americans all the time. She's with the Eagles and Steely Dan and Lenny Kravitz, and
Yeah.
she speaks like an American.
Really?
Nobody, yeah, the Americans don't believe she's when the Americans are on a tour with her and they come to Germany, she starts speaking German like, "Hey, wow, how did you learn German?" She's like, "I'm fucking German, you idiots."
I was
Um,
born.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that
Yeah.
I moved to Germany. I was living in London at the time, and then Tanya didn't move. My wife didn't want to move to London, and I'm so grateful that I got out of London. Actually, to be honest, and now I
Yeah.
live in on the banks of the River Rhine in Bonn, in West
Wow.
Germany.
Cool.
Yeah.
I have a friend from Canada who grew up at the same time I did. He's the same age as me, and he's a drummer and used to play in a Rush tribute band that was the best Rush tribute band probably in the world at the time. And
Okay.
this was in the 80s. And he now lives in Berlin and plays for Destruction,
Okay.
uh, big metal band,
Yeah.
and he's been with them I think like 10 years now.
Oh, cool.
Used to be with Annihilator. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know how you go from being in technical Rush music and then you go straight to Annihilator and now Destruction, but
Yeah.
watching him play just makes me tired. Like I'll watch his videos and it's just like constantly going and every
Yeah.
song is a full-on workout, right? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
insane,
Yeah. Impressive. So
which
he
is
moved
easy when
just
you're
he
30 or
moved just
40.
for the music, did he?
He moved. I don't know if he moved. I think he moved for the music. I think he moved because he was hired by Destruction, straight out
That's
of Annihilator. And he also does some other stuff. Like he does a lot of like he toured with Wasp for
mm.
one tour as their drummer when they lost their drummer or something happened. And he's done a bunch of these classic music things where it was like lots of people, Alice Cooper and all these other people, and he was the house drummer for that thing or whatever. But Destruction's his main gig, and
He's not called something black, is he? No.
Randy Black, yeah.
Oh yeah, I know Randy. Yeah. Well,
Do you?
Tanya did a tour with him. Yeah, she did the Rock Meets Classic tour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So if you ever do see Randy or whatever, just tell him, do you know this guy Marcel from Canada? And he'd be like, "Are you kidding me?"
Okay.
Like
Funny.
we've
Yeah.
been friends for literally 40 plus years. So, but anyways, he's married. I don't know if he's married. Is he married to her? He's married to a woman from Berlin, so he lives in Berlin.
Nice.
But I don't know if he moved there for the woman or moved there for Destruction. That's a good
It's
question.
probably
I've never
the
asked him.
woman. Let's be honest. It's
It
probably the
usually
woman.
is. Usually, when somebody relocates across the world, there's a woman involved.
Yeah. Yeah. I would
Um,
say so.
but you live in Germany, but you're an L-Acoustics guy, and I think you were trained on L-Acoustic, and
I was.
but
As much as an L-Acoustics guy and monitor engineer can be, I guess. Yeah. I've
yeah,
done L-Acoustics training, and if I actually recommend L-Acoustics for OMD because I think it sounds better on L-Acoustics. But yeah, we were talking about this earlier, and it's funny that in Germany there isn't much. Definitely where I live, like the local venue I work in sometimes has got an Adamson rig in, and the local
all
conference.
the way from Canada. That's kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
weird.
The local conference
Yeah.
company I work for is all Mayer, and
Huh.
I do wonder whether DMV is really from Germany or it's just a con.
It's crazy. That is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, because I'm a layperson when it comes to these line array systems. I mean, I sell a lot of them because I own a used equipment company, but what's the difference between L-Acoustic and D&B? If you're trying to sell me on L-Acoustic over D&B, what's the difference? Why would I buy L-Acoustic versus D&B?
Um, I think for me, K1, the L-Acoustic system, is the best outdoor line array system you'll ever hear. I think it performs outdoors better than any other. It doesn't seem to get blown around by the wind. Let's just say it in very, very layman's terms. It's an opinion I have, but that's it. I wouldn't necessarily always choose L-Acoustics, to be honest.
Huh.
I would, for certain music, if I was gonna mix, a pop, straight down the line pop group, I would probably recommend D&B, because I think D&B has this polite hi-fi sound
Which
that
system?
specifically the new stuff, the GSL or
GSL, KSL.
KSL,
Yeah.
GSL, all that stuff. I think
Yeah.
it's got a very rounded. What's the way of describing it? I don't know. I always say to people, and most people seem to agree with me, you could walk blindfolded into a concert, and if it was a D&B rig, you would know. You wouldn't without taking your
I
your
wouldn't.
your mask off. I don't know, maybe, but
I wouldn't.
it's yeah. I think D&B has every speaker system has its own sound, right? Which is a beautiful thing that still exists. I think it's great that I'm well into old guitar amps and stuff, and I love
Yeah.
the fact that you know I can put a record on and be like, that's an AC30, right? And
Yeah.
I love the fact that speakers, even nowadays in the modern age, do still have a certain tonality,
Yeah.
even with all the
The
processing
challenge
that
is,
goes
though,
in.
it's no longer an AC30. It's some sort of
Yeah,
a modeling amp that's producing the
yeah,
sound of an AC30, but it's not a Vox AC30. So
yeah. Sadly, yeah. Although
yeah.
I could talk about modeling stuff for quite a while but
Yeah.
we should stick to audio because I actually know a little bit about that. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, L-Acoustics is a great all-round product. I know it well. Like I said, I'm a monitor guy, so I don't really get to choose PAs very much. But I was trained on L-Acoustics, and I know more about L-Acoustics. Let's just say,
It strikes me as funny that a British person would pick a French company, a French brand
yeah,
versus an English brand or an American brand or even a German brand. Uh, so I don't
yeah.
know.
I couldn't tell you why I was, to be honest. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well,
I
because
think
you didn't care where it was from,
right.
probably,
Yeah,
like most
yeah,
people don't, right?
yeah. I guess.
So, yeah. But speaking of modeling, and this is a really dumb question because I am
Mm,
a layperson, but is there modeling, like if I wanted an old tape echo, a Roland tape echo, for example, is there a plugin for a Roland tape echo? Is there a plugin for a
absolutely.
Yamaha SPX 90?
Um, I think there probably is an SPX90. I love an SPX90. I grew up on an
Yeah.
SPX90.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there is, and there's all these reverb plugins now. You can just basically import your own impulse response and create. You can actually measure the impulse response of a room and create that room in a plugin. You know, so you can
Interesting.
say, I want my snare drum to sound like it's in Carnegie Hall, and then somebody will have taken the impulse response and the reverberation sounds and the decay of Carnegie Hall, and you can tap it into a reverb and make it sound like that.
Yeah.
Maybe it takes some of the fun out of it, like we were talking earlier about recording. You know, earlier in time, you would have had to take that snare drum into Carnegie Hall and hit it in order to get
Yeah.
a Carnegie Hall sound, and which would have maybe opened up your creative world a bit
Yeah.
more. You know, maybe on the drive from the recording studio to Carnegie Hall, you'd have come up with another creative idea, and that's now missing. Who
Yeah, like
knows?
I love seeing, like if you watch Led Zeppelin's Song Remains the Same or
Mm.
things like that where they talk about how they recorded some of those sounds down a
Oh man,
long hallway with
yeah. When the levee
this hanging
breaks,
and or
yeah,
that
yeah, the top
yeah,
of a
exactly,
staircase,
that drum sound.
yeah,
Yeah. And
amazing.
I love those stories or even just, Jimmy Page talking about, and I don't remember the exact stories, but like I had to go into a bathroom and close the door halfway, not all the way, but
Yeah,
halfway to get the perfect sound,
yeah,
and now you can just dial a little knob or something or punch a button or, soon it'll just be all done by prompt. Make it sound like a small bathroom, about 4 foot by 6 foot, with a door half closed.
yeah.
The walls are,
AI,
the
yeah,
walls are plaster painted with whatever, I
yeah.
mean, and it'll just model that. So
I was watching recently Simon Phillips, the drummer. He was telling a story about recording one of the albums he recorded, and he said, and the producer said, I know how to get the perfect kick drum sound. Simon Phillips said, oh, what do I take the head off? Do I put a pillow in it? Whatever. He said, no, you need to go and buy me a 2-gallon paint pot, fill it up half with water, and I'll put a D112 microphone in it, and we'll put that inside your kick drum. And that's what they did.
wild.
Yeah. Whoever came up with that, it must have been a moment of frustration of, I cannot get a good kick drum sound. There's a
Well,
paint pot here.
I'll
I don't
tell
know.
you, I knew a
Yeah.
drummer and
Mm.
it wasn't Randy Black. It was a different drummer. But I knew a drummer who, this was before there were proper dampers on drums. People were using duct tape.
Sure.
And he decided, and he had tried a million different things, and he was a perfectionist, and he was using Kotex pads.
Mm.
And it had to be a particular size and a particular model of Kotex pads because he
Mm.
had tried them all. And that was what he used for dampeners on all of his drums.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Incredible. It's like even Brian May, he still uses a 3 pence coin as a guitar pick, right?
Oh,
Because even
really?
still to this day, yeah, his guitar tech, there's a rig rundown or something geeky on YouTube.
Huh.
And his guitar tech's like, I have to go on eBay or all these coin collecting shops to buy 3 pence pieces, which is a coin that's not been made since the 1980s or something.
Yeah.
And that's what he still uses as a plectrum, and that's where his tone comes from.
Yeah, it's a particular type of attack or whatever, I guess. And
Yeah, and I
I
love
remember when
stuff
he
like that.
first got super popular,
Mm.
and I worked in a guitar store, and um, you know, Vox AC30s just went crazy. Like all of a sudden, they went from being an amp that you could go buy at a pawn shop for $100 to
Yeah.
now people were paying $1,000 or $800 or whatever it was for these crappy little amps because Brian May was using them now,
Yeah.
so, and he had
That
such an incredible guitar tone.
the world's gone crazy now with that stuff, hasn't it? Like there's guitar. Somebody will mention. I think I know an example of this because I mess around with guitar tones in my spare time. That's kind of what I do. I've got an old AC3 here.
Oh,
I
fun.
can't play guitar particularly well because as soon as I pick the guitar up, I'm obsessed with the tone. Typical
Yeah.
audio guy, right? But there was somebody went back and looked over Gary Moore's old rig,
Yeah.
and he used this particular pedal, a Digitech Bad Monkey distortion pedal, which at the time, just before this interview came out, you could get them for like £5 on eBay. They were
Yeah.
like a shitty plastic Chinese,
Yeah.
whatever soldered pedal, and all of a sudden they're on Reverb.com now for about $600. And it's crazy
Yes.
this fad of people. And I love the guitar players. I watch Rick Beato a lot. I don't know if you're
Yeah,
familiar with
yeah. I
Rick
love that
Beato.
show. Yeah, I
Dude, I
love
love Rick
his
Beato.
YouTube channel. Yeah.
And I love the guitarists that come on and just say, hey, look, I tried everything to sound like Van Halen. And he even played through Van Halen's rig once, and I didn't sound like him. He's like,
Yeah.
you'll always sound like you. And I
Yeah.
love that kind of, and and I think it's the same with what we do. Like, you'll always strive to sound like or be like somebody else, but you're probably
You
a
have
really
a
good version
signature.
of you. Yeah, you're a really
Yeah,
good
you've
version of
got
you already.
DNA. Yeah.
Nobody else was born to be you, so just be you, I guess. Yeah, it's a nice thing.
Yeah.
It's like a nice romantic saying, isn't it? But it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on AI? And specific to our industry and specific to whether it's front of house mixing or monitor mixing, how long do you think before there's not a person standing there?
I think it's still quite a way to go, but I do have a story about this, actually. It's funny you mentioned this.
Oh, perfect.
My good friend, who used to be a front of house engineer, we used to work for a band called Uriah Heep together.
Of course. I love Uriah Heep.
He's a guy called Dan Payne, and he works for Midas now. You know, Midas, the console manufacturer.
Of course, yeah.
Who are owned by Behringer. Anyway, and he was tasked with developing what is now the digital desk that Midas have, their flagship desk, the HD96, right? And it stands for Heritage Digital because the Heritage consoles were the big old,
the Midas Heritage,
the purple big, everybody loved them. So they made the Heritage Digital, and I was sent to beta test it. And then I went to this. It was the closest the one they had was in Belgium. So I went with a multi-track recording setup, and I went, and they said, okay, the first thing we need to do is you need to create an online login. And I'm like, and I was thinking, is this part of the beta testing process? They're like, no. In order to use this console, it needs to be online. This is God's honest truth. It needs to be online, and you need to be logged in as you. So, I was just excited to get into the depths of this console and figure it out, and I'd helped Dan out with a few things, and I was keen to see if he'd put them in the desk. So, and then I log in, I create a profile, and then it says, oh yeah, and your show file will always save in here. All your show files you make, will save into this online cloud account. And I was like, okay, fair enough, whatever. And then I played around with this desk, and I liked it, and it was cool. And then there's all these learn things going on when you're queuing something. There's like a little learn tab will flash up and then disappear. I'm like, what's this learn thing? Like, oh, it's got AI built in it, and I'm like, okay, what's the deal? He's like, everybody that uses this console and logs in, every data they import and every move they make and every EQ move, every fader move is being logged by AI, and it will create a profile of you. And so at some point, you will be able to, somebody will be line checking the snare, and you'll be able to say, make this snare sound like Aaron EQ's snare drums.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
was like,
presumably they're going to put walls between everyone like that, and I wouldn't be able to dial up Aaron's snare drum,
well,
but
this
Aaron
is the thing.
could dial up his snare drum.
Well, so I started asking this question. I said, well, where's all this data's all going to our cloud so we can use it for analysis. And I don't know what it was. Something inside me didn't like it, right? But of course, this data collection has already begun, as we know. Whether it will be used in that, to be honest, AI, great. It couldn't. Apparently, I read a statistic that, or I think I might have seen it on Rick Beato, that 1% of the music in the charts is already AI. Like in the top 40 already.
It is crazy. Yeah.
So it can be used for creation. It can be used for, but can it paint a Picasso? Here's the thing, and I'm not trying to compare necessarily what somebody does on a console to a masterpiece, but you know what I mean? Can it? It can recreate something, but it can't create it. Is what?
But
it's
here's
the way
the
I
thing,
see
though.
it. Yeah.
Here's the thing. So a Picasso is a bad example because you're never going to make 10 Picassos that are exactly the same and produce them from scratch.
Sure.
So when you're mixing sound, obviously you want it to sound the same regardless of what the characteristics of the building or the crowd or the dynamics of the room are. You want it to sound exactly the same to the person who's standing or sitting in that seat or whatever, right?
Well,
that's where I think AI is really good.
Can I stop you there, though? If you go to see a show,
you're the sound guy, I'm an idiot.
No, it's interesting because a lot of people are of this opinion, and a lot of artists are of this opinion, and I'm not. And this is where I might get into an argument with an artist potentially. But if I go and see a show in the Royal Albert Hall in London, I don't want it to sound like I'm watching a show in Carnegie Hall. I want it to sound like I'm in the Royal Albert Hall in London, right? Do you agree with that or not? Because I'm fundamentally
I think you want it to sound like OMD. Wherever they're playing, I think you want them to sound like OMD, right?
But I think making everything sounds the same. I don't know. Is this not
but
to
are
me?
The characteristics of the room a strength or a weakness? And I guess
they should be used as a strength.
Someone's perception.
I think they should be used as a strength because they're the thing you can't change. Right? They're the constant. Yeah. You can't fight the room, and if you try, you lose. So yeah. But anyway, AI. Yeah. Do I think? Are you asking me if I think it will be mixing shows?
Well, let me give you another analogy. So I don't think it's happened yet in England, but here in the United States, we already have self-driving taxis. And we're starting to see cars without steering wheels in them. And some of these self-driving taxis from Waymo and stuff have no steering wheel. And some manufacturers are now designing cars either with no steering wheel or with a steering wheel that has a tuck away compartment. And so that if you're using it in self-driving mode, that you can just get rid of it, get it out of the way so you can put your laptop in front of you or whatever, right?
Sure.
And so when do we have a console with no buttons on it and no knobs on it to twist?
It's a scary thought. It's a scary thought. I don't think it will be in my lifetime, but I might be wrong.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I just think there's so many variables. There's so much stuff that goes beyond science, and there's so many things that go beyond prediction in what we do. Like you can't predict a lot of things that happen in real life. I think with enough data, you can process what can happen on a street. But music is dependent on emotion and mood and things that we don't even have a formula for yet.
I understand, yeah. But wouldn't you think that that's so much a bigger problem when you're talking about a car moving through the streets of Los Angeles or San Francisco or London or New York? and with people jumping in front of it, lights changing color, a taxi or a UPS driver opening a door, or someone opening a door on their car and you got to stop for that, a dog jumping out from between two cars.
Mm.
There's a billion variables, and the outcome or the potential ramification of those variables could mean that someone dies. So it's a
Yeah.
little more critical than, oh, the guy in, I forget which ballroom you were talking about, Hammersmith or something, uh, didn't think that it had the same normal characteristics that the room usually creates. But instead it sounded more like the other ballroom, this other one.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, like I think that's where AI shines, is when there's a billion pieces of data being thrown at it
Uh-huh.
and it needs to sort through those and make a really sound decision, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Uh, that's where I think AI is winning the war right now.
Okay.
Whether
In
that's down to surgery or driving an automobile or programming a sound or lighting console, not programming but operating.
mm.
And, the programming thing is all different. Like that is something where, you know, I don't know that programming is a huge savings between a human and a robot. And I'd rather have the human there because they can counteract with the band and, they've got a relationship. They've been working together a long time or whatever. But to then go and fly that human around from show to show to show and put him on a bunk on a bus and feed him every day and he gets sick or COVID happens or whatever else. It's just, you could reduce the number of moving parts on a tour by eliminating
Sure.
some of those positions, obviously. Now, am I an advocate for that? Of course not. I've got so
Good.
many
Okay.
friends that are front of house engineers, but
Mm.
I think it's going to be driven by money. Artists, managers, accountants are going to be presented with these technologies and opportunities. And I don't know.
I mean,
I'm arguing for fun right now, not
yeah,
because I
no,
think I want it to go that direction. Uh,
I'm just kind of thinking that, to be honest, even with automation being as good as it is today, I mean, to a certain extent, you know, I time code my monitor console nowadays, right? The same way that our lighting guy will time code his show. And, in theory, all we do at the start of a show, obviously during the day, everyone's doing their thing, right? The lighting guy's doing his positions that change from day to day because the rig moves. The front of house guys EQing the room, the things, and then, but in theory, all we do then is click time code enable, off we go, right? And we just
Go, yeah.
sit there and hope that nothing goes wrong. That already happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, whether there will be an AI that does that does the programming stage of it. I mean, I'm sure it's possible. Let's just both say that it's definitely possible, right? Does our industry have enough funding to make it even viable? I don't know. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
so here's the thing. I
mm,
think it could become a race. So, like for example, if you get a console company who's not Digico or not one of the very top brands
mhm.
who decides, okay, what have we got to lose? We're going to be first. Because that's part of the problem right now is whoever says, I don't need you anymore, front of house engineer, is going to get kicked off the specs immediately. Like they're done. I'll
Sure.
never spec another ABC console because you're the one who did the
Mm,
deed and said I'm expendable. Um, but somebody's going to have the balls to do this, or someone's board of directors or investors are going to push them to go the AI route or whatever. And I think it'll start softly. So it'll start as, Aaron plus AI equals super monitor guy.
sure. Yeah.
Like now you're
Like,
the
yeah.
best monitor person in the world.
Hmm.
Nothing will ever go wrong anymore because you're supported by AI. So
Yeah.
that'll be step one.
And
And
that's
then
what
eventually,
music's done that too, right? It's been like
music's
this
done
this
that.
producer with this AI
Yeah.
set of
Well,
tools
and
can make this music. Yeah.
virtually in an office, like virtually every role in an office, whether it's sales or accounting or whatever it is, they're all doing it now too.
Yeah.
AI supported roles. But AI is certainly, AI companies are going after those roles and trying to take a bigger piece of the pie. And the
Yeah.
same thing will eventually happen with those audio companies. Now you've started it, you've basically lit the match, and now we're going to start a bonfire and get rid of all these people. And we're going to do it by enticing the customer on what the cost savings will be. And, so
I think
financial
that's the
incentive is usually
tricky
pretty.
part in our industry. That's the tricky part, right? Because and one of the the magical things to the artist is that they don't know every detail of what happens before the show comes together. They don't know how much uh that costs and how much it could not cost. That's all done by a human, by a tour manager or management or a. So how would a console manufacturer's link to get to the management would have to go through the human that they're trying to eliminate, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but
Which is the interesting
so
part.
when the world needed automated lighting,
Yeah.
what happened? A smart scientist got with a very successful musical act,
Mm.
Genesis,
Yes.
and created Verilight.
Hmm.
And so you had a built-in client, you had a built-in supporter and loudmouth who was going to go out there and say this is the most amazing thing, and they basically were the market creator for that product. Everybody
Mm.
saw Verilights on Genesis and went, "Holy shit, those lights are moving," you know,
Yeah.
and so I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch. Like I hope I'm young enough to see how this all progresses. I know it's going to be slow because we are a small-ish industry when it comes to this kind of stuff. And like MA Lighting, Grand MA, they're not going to want to piss off lighting designers, who are currently specking the hell out of their product all over the world.
No.
But what if we've got some fancy Chinese manufacturer who makes an incredible console that does 10 times as much as the MA console does, but costs a quarter of the price and doesn't need an operator?
Mm.
Now they got nothing to lose. They're going to go after your customers, so
True.
it's not someone eating themselves, it's somebody else eating your
I
lunch,
see what you mean. Yeah. Jeez,
So
you're giving me anxiety
I'm
now.
sorry, that's my job, is to warn the world for what might happen, I guess. But, again, I'm playing devil's advocate because
Yeah.
I think that our industry is going to be much more on the support side, AI support. So the things that you're doing that are repetitive and boring and you hate doing them every day,
Yeah.
that's going to be the first stuff that AI goes after. The lines of code that you have to do, or the stuff where you have to assign things, or like
Sure.
when you're assigning lighting positions and stuff, like getting rid of a lot of the labor is
Mm.
going to be step one.
Yeah. Okay.
um I think everything else will be secondary. So
It's tricky. Yeah. I mean, you're probably right. I couldn't see a lot of things that have now come to fruition being possible at the time when I heard about them. I remember my first boss at that PA company I started at saying, nobody's going to want to mix a show on a TV screen about digital consoles.
funny, huh?
And I agreed with him about, hey, we all do it now.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it will just become the norm. Maybe. I mean,
It's how every technology seems to be, seems to happen. Like first there's a whole bunch of people that say, no, that'll never work.
yeah,
Why would we ever want to do that? Why would we ever want to fly our speakers in this weird looking curve? That's ugly.
yeah,
The stacks are beautiful. Everyone loves them.
yeah.
And, you don't see very many point source stacks on big tours anymore, do you? So,
Sadly, not. No.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I miss them. I used to love when, the bands would be going so hard and the stacks were practically moving and stuff. And like
You,
it was fun.
you know what I miss too is that if you're doing a standing show, it used to be louder at the front than at the back, right?
Yeah.
So if you wanted it to be loud, you would walk to the front, and if you
Yeah, you
wanted
could
to hear
adjust
it,
your own sound. Yeah,
yeah.
your own
And
sound
now the
levels. Yeah.
invention of line erasers meant you can't escape.
Yeah.
You
Although
can't escape a bad sounding show.
I'm probably missing 20% of the hearing in my ears because believe it or not, I was this skinny little kid and I was probably 15 or 16 years old, and I remember working security between
Mm.
the barrier and the stage in Calgary, Canada, for a Ted Nugent
Oh, jeez.
show. It was Ted Nugent, the tour where he wore a loincloth. It was called Scream Dream or something like that.
Okay.
And it was, they bragged about it being one of the loudest tours ever at that point, one of the loudest shows ever. And
Mm.
I'm right in front of these massive stacks of speakers. And I just remember my ears ringing for days after that show, right?
Jeez.
And, earplugs were not really a thing
No. No.
back then, you
No.
know?
I guess you couldn't,
So,
and had a job that placed you right in front of that speaker cavern. You couldn't
yeah,
move, I guess,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
But
and
yeah, I
I
do
was
miss,
more than willing,
yeah, yeah, at that age, I'm
So,
sure. I do, yeah, but like I said, I do miss the point source vibe of it is louder at the front than it is at the back, and that was something that L-Acoustics actually created, was this idea of it should be the same level all the way through the venue, and it's another thing that I don't necessarily agree with. But
yeah,
it's improved the concert experience for the people who buy the cheap seats. Let's be honest, which is not a
yeah.
bad thing. Yeah,
Well, and also for older people who want to sit closer to the front but don't want to have their head blasted off,
yeah,
it's a
okay,
little more pleasant for them as well, I guess. So,
I guess, yeah,
yeah, but I'm with you. I agree. Like I like that SPL boom boom, when you're standing near a
yeah,
stack of speakers.
yeah.
You don't really get that as much anymore
No,
at shows because yeah, I mean, it's just so nice. The sound's nice.
yeah,
It's
it's like a big
nice and
hi-fi.
perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's like
yeah.
a big hi-fi, exactly. But
Mm.
what about God, I talked about it at the front end of the show. Not whoa, boy, my brain is fried. Hang on a sec. I got to remember what I talked about at the front end of the show.
I
Oh,
can't remember either.
immersive audio.
Oh
So
yeah, okay.
when do you think, or do you think that live shows are going to be transitioning into even smaller speakers, but many more of them in this whole immersive experience sort of layout?
Oh, it's
Is
already
that coming?
happening.
Is it?
I was just on the phone with my friend just before we did this podcast, and he's at ISE in Barcelona right now,
Yeah.
Integrated Systems or whatever it's called,
That's what
and
I was
he was.
talking about when I got into immersive audio, because there's a lot of stuff being shown there.
Yeah, and he's doing a demo. He's really at the forefront of that immersive scene, and he mixes front of house for Anastacia. Actually, he's called Eric Lutz, and he is all over it. And he's explaining it to me because I was wary of it at the time. Wary of it at the time. I was like, I'm not sure this actually works, But then another friend of mine, John Gale, went out with Bjork, the Icelandic pop star,
Yeah.
and he did a whole immersive show, a whole immersive tour, where they hung like 12 hangs of linery across the front of the stage, and I can see it working. Do you know about Clang? That's like an in-ear technology that's immersive.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
So and there's an app you can actually download if you're interested in that. The Clang app. It's got a demo on it, and you've got your own little multi-track, and you can move things around your head just in your normal headphones. It's very interesting,
Yeah.
and I think it does. I think it does improve the experience of a show.
Yeah.
But only certain
Huh.
shows. I don't think Motorhead immersive would work, if you know what I mean.
See, and I've heard both sides of it. Like I haven't been to the Sphere in Las Vegas yet because it
Well, I
just
have.
doesn't
Oof.
really work for me. I have no
No.
interest in it whatsoever.
Mm.
But I've heard people say that they went and saw shows there and the sound was incredible. And then I've heard people say it was ridiculous. It was like sitting in a little thing with, 1,000 speakers around the walls, and they're all tiny little speakers and there's no SPL whatsoever. And, it just, you could hear it and it sounded nice and pleasant, but it didn't sound like a concert.
My wife was doing Lenny Kravitz in the Sphere for a Delta Airlines corporate event, and I was in Vegas at the time, and I went to see it, and I
Oh,
saw the sound checks and everything too,
yeah.
and this hollow point PA system is all behind the screen, and I was doing the rehearsals for U2 actually for Clare Brothers, and we brought this system in to the U2's band rehearsal space in Dublin.
Yeah.
So I know all about the system, and it takes 27 channels of Dante to every single speaker.
Ugh,
Right. Anyway,
Jesus.
so Laurie Quigley, I don't know if you know, he's a legendary front of house engineer. He mixes Lenny
Yeah,
Kravitz.
I know of him. I don't know him.
Yeah. So he's like, I don't want any of this surround sound shit. I just want a left right PA. Right.
Yeah.
2 hours later, there's a million people with laptops trying to make this system a left right PA, and it was amazing that something that's supposed to be built that to draw your attention only ever. Your image was always looking at the screen. There was no way of drawing the image to the stage. Right?
Yeah. That's what I hate. That's what
And
I
the
hate.
severe, and I'm all about video, and I'm not one of those
Yeah.
audio guys that hates video.
Yeah.
It's
Me
it,
too.
it's an amazing experience to be sat in there, but there's no point in the band being on stage at all.
Well, this is what I said when, and God bless them for doing it and everything else. But the U2 thing, when U2 was in the
Yeah,
sphere at the beginning, and people were sending me videos and stuff, and I remember the first video I got, and I'm looking and looking and looking, and I'm like,
where's
where's
the
the
band?
stage? Like, where is Bono? I can
Yeah,
hear him singing, but where is he? I can't
yeah.
even find him. It took me like 5 minutes to figure out where Bono was. So,
Mm.
it's wild, but
No,
yeah,
there's definitely nothing audio or visually in the shows I've seen there that draw your attention to the people on stage, which
yeah.
is kind of takes away from a concert vibe to me. I want to be in the same room as the artist. That's why I'm at a concert, and I still go
Well,
to concerts. I'm one of those rare people in our industry that
yeah,
still enjoys
yeah,
going to concerts, right?
yeah. Me too. Occasionally, not quite as much because I'm more spoiled now, and I want someone to pick me up at my house, drop me off at front of house, take
Yeah,
me back
sure.
out of there before the crowd leaves. And
Yeah,
that ain't gonna happen. So,
but
but
the
the other
concert is
thing
all
is, like,
about connection between the artist and the audience. To me, I mean, and the
I was gonna
further
say something
away we
similar.
remove that, and
Yeah,
the further away we trying to connect the audience with technology, the less need there is for artists,
yeah.
the less need there is for music.
Well, and I would say this that I think that we're going that direction. And then that's one thing I really don't like. Like, I've heard
Mm,
people talking about, wearing special glasses, and you're going to have a blended experience, what do they call it? Mixed media or something
yeah.
experience. And I don't like that. Like, I want
No.
to see an artist with some lights and a PA system, and I want to hear it. And I
Hmm.
want them to play real music. I don't even like recorded music during live shows
Yeah.
and click tracks and all that stuff. Like, I like organic, normal guitars and amplifiers and drums music. And I'd hate to see that go away much more than it already has. So
Yeah. Me too.
sadly, Aaron, I'm going to have to run because I actually, we've been going 2 hours. Wow. You're
I
an
know. And
interesting guy. I could talk to you for another 2 hours, to be
I was
perfectly
enjoying
honest.
that actually. Yeah. I don't know
Yeah,
whether we
me as
actually
well.
said anything that anybody else would want to hear, but
No, I
I've
mean,
enjoyed
I
the
didn't even look at
conversation.
all the questions and stuff that I had for you. And we just went off and talked for a couple hours. So, no, I appreciate it very much. And we'll have you back on anytime and maybe
Awesome.
actually get to some of the questions.
Yeah.
Uh,
It was
but
great talking
yeah,
to you. Thanks. Thanks for having a young person on too.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for doing it. I appreciate it very much. All
Thanks,
right, man.
buddy.
Thanks.
Take care.